Good morning. It's Tuesday. It's day 17. Y'all, it's day 17 of the Alec Murdaugh murder trials. Court is not back in session yet. My tech is giving me a whole bunch of the business. It's Valentine's Day. It's all the things today, and I couldn't be happier than to be here with you. I am so here with y'all. So, y'all, I'm sorry. The tech was fighting back. I kept pushing go live, and it was just like, we're not gonna do that. So cheers. I've got hot water and lemon here from Middle Tennessee. We're gonna roll the intro. It's already been a morning. Court's just about back. Let's get going. Let's get going. Let's get going. Hey there. I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not. Let's get into it. Resuming court, the judge said, can we have our witness back on the bench? The witness on the bench is the medical examiner for cross-examination. And well, at the end of court yesterday, we saw Poot say this should be extensive. It really shouldn't. It really shouldn't be extensive. The court has said our favorite thing: bring the jury, bring the jury, bring the jury, bring the jury. We're here for it. Let's bring the jury. So the medical examiner back on the stand for cross-examination. Dick said it was going to be a long cross-examination. I don't think it should be. It should be brief. They should ask things that they can properly ask. I imagine he's going to ask things they can't properly ask. I imagine we're going to see Dick ask shit like, hey, do you think a father could have done this? Stuff like that. That is just completely inappropriate. We'll see. He should stick with, could this have been two shooters? She can't answer that other than to say anything's possible because, of course, she's the medical examiner. And there's not any controversy. Maggie and Paul were murdered. The only controversy is over who was holding the guns. So that. All right. That's it. Yesterday this is what we ended the day with. Difficult testimony for jurors. Horrible pictures to see for anyone, including those used to seeing them, who kind of
thank you. Good morning.
Desensitize themselves to it.
Day number 17.
Yes, it is.
Cross-examination.
Please, Court, Your Honor.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to switch to try to get our triple feed in just a second.
Good morning, Dr. Riemer.
Good morning.
Let me at the outset say we're going to be just yesterday, as you went through direct, we saw some very graphic images, and I apologize, but we're going to have to do that again today.
Why?
You, of course, this is what you see every
Why?
day. But I'm sure you understand.
Objection, no
how other
question.
people may, especially people related to the deceased, might react to that.
Of course.
Of course, no
Now,
question pending. He's just giving a soliloquy.
Let me also explain at the outset.
They let him just talk.
Until I read your autopsy report.
Dick, he just filibusters.
I had never really considered the mechanics of a shotgun or an AR-15 or blackout.
I don't care what you consider, Dick.
So I'm learning even as we speak, and I hope I can learn.
They could object to all of this, and they're not.
Understand
They should.
your opinion.
I would.
And also help me understand what may have happened or didn't happen. Okay. So if I ask you questions,
he's trying
simplistic
to be charming.
My understanding of this process is somewhat basic. So I'm going to try to walk through this in a way I can glean.
This is all lies, by the way.
What the evidence is and what your conclusions are.
This is all lies.
Absolutely.
He was a prosecutor for years.
Tolerate my somewhat sophomoric approach to this.
This is all
Okay.
just.
Of course. I'm sure you'll be fine.
This is all
So let me
just
understand.
him trying to
understand,
warm feelings from the jury and this
First
witness.
of all, let's talk about Maggie for just a minute. And
he has done this a very
were
long
you
time.
shown
He has done
photographs
plenty of juries with
the
guns
back of her
involved.
thigh
It's
that
just
were taken at the scene.
appalling. But
The
it's
back
his
of her
style,
calf, I'm sorry.
and I
I do
hate it.
not.
Okay. So let me see if I can find these.
And then it doesn't really make
It'll
the
take me just a
fumbling
Second, I thought I had them laying right
any
out
better. He should have had this. He should have had everything ready to go.
here. Thank you for indulgence. One moment.
You just started questioning. What did you do the second you walked into court? Because the second you walk into court, and he's like waving his hand at his team, like, why don't you have this? The second he walks into court, he should have those things in order for his examination. He had time this morning. I can run late. I no longer have to go to court. It's one of the reasons I didn't want to go to court anymore, because I do tend to run late. But Dick, Creighton is not here to organize your exhibits for you. Oh,
I apologize. I thought I had everything sitting right here.
sure.
I may.
This is not, I don't think he's this disorganized. I think this is a tactic. Maybe he is this disorganized. I've got the court gained up as much as ears can tolerate. Once he starts talking into the mic, it'll be.
Harpoon, if there's an item in evidence, you don't have to show it to opposing counsel to present, to continue with the witness.
This is not in evidence.
And we don't want to see
Apologize.
it. We don't want to see it, gentlemen.
Your Honor,
Teresa.
offer into evidence.
Emily, you are as sick of these
Defense
people as I am. Yeah, I'm
115.
tired. I'm so
Any
invested.
objection?
No objection on site, Your Honor.
I'm so invested on how this is going to happen. I'm so invested.
Please,
But I am
on
so
the screen.
tired. But it's, oh, the screens aren't covered. Oh, yes, they are. I am invested. I am tired. But I've got my Lawnard mug. I have a new Lawnard mug in the
Have you
shop for
seen
you
that
guys
photograph?
today.
No, I've not.
Okay. In your, I noticed in your autopsy report, you remarked that there is a bruise on the back of the leg in that similar position, correct?
Oh, I don't recall. Can
Could
I?
you look, please? Thank you.
Ew. I'm just put off. I really like the other defense attorney, Barber, the one who's been doing the experts, better. I like them better. Much better. But here we are. Emily, this is not, ineffective counsel doesn't mean bumbling. It really means that they were not competent, did not object. It is a very high standard. This is part of his shtick. It's just, I don't find it like charming, like, I'm just one of you. I don't, I'm trying to learn this as we go. It's, I don't find him trying to align himself with the jury. Like, we're all just doing this together. It's so difficult to be charming.
I don't see in my report where I'm remarked on of a bruise on the left leg.
Okay, so was there a bruise on the right leg?
Dr. B says hi. Busy. It's a busy morning.
I don't have any, I didn't make any comment about that in my
So
report.
no one asked you to opine about any issue on the back of her left calf?
No, and I did not observe that at autopsy.
And by the time it got to autopsy, had her body been washed or
No,
okay, but if this is mud, you wouldn't necessarily expect to see
it
it.
could have fallen off, correct?
Correct. So, you were not asked to opine about whether this was
what she
whether
said.
the bruising on the back of the left calf, which would have been consistent with somebody stepping on her calf.
No, I was not asked about that,
Okay.
And there was no bruise.
And you were not shown this photo.
correct?
Okay.
And there was no bruise.
And just to deal with Maggie a little bit further, you testified yesterday that the shots were consistent, I think, with someone circling her.
Well, I didn't actually use that term. I said that
You answered yes to the prosecutor, though.
She was shot from, at one point from behind her and at one point from above her. So that could mean that there was it could mean that she was turning before she got the first one and then fell, because she could have also been moving.
Well,
So
we know that the shooter was moving because some wounds have stippling, stippling and
Some didn't.
soot. Am I saying that correctly?
well, there was no soot, but
Now,
just
what
we
does
have
soot indicate?
soot is a contact wound.
Okay.
So she had stippling, which is not quite contact, it's further back.
3 to 4 feet?
Well,
she said 3.
usually, we don't see it more than 3 feet away. So it's somewhere within 3 feet.
See how he's trying to
Okay.
push
And
3 to
so
4 feet? She's like, no,
she
3. He's trying
may
to
have
push,
been
push,
turning.
push.
The shooter may have been moving straight
push.
on. I mean, if that's
Incrementally
as good an
push to make it better for
explanation
him to
what you saw
argue.
As somebody circling her, correct?
Yes, I mean, from my perspective, based on the autopsy, that is a reasonable explanation.
Of course. So the reasonable explanation is she's moving, trying to perhaps avoid being shot, turning around, trying to run, whatever, right?
Well, she could be turning around after getting the initial shots.
Right.
And then if the shooter was still stationary, then she could have gotten that one. So it doesn't imply that she could have been moving, not just the shooter.
Okay. And the ones without
Dick is absolutely
Stippling
doing
was
his
more
job.
than-
his style I find off-putting.
Barrel
I
of
find
the
a lot of
gun
Creighton
would have been
style
more than
off-putting
4
too. It's
feet
not
away.
just Dick.
Well, it's kind of a rough estimate, but I would say, it would be more than 3 feet, possibly more than
And that would not be, that would be the barrel, the end of the barrel of the gun.
That's right, because that's where the
Dick's
gunpowder
job
starts coming
is
out.
to
That doesn't mean
intimidate.
the shooter
That's his
was
job.
3 feet away. or 4 feet
Absolutely
away.
not, just the barrel.
This
of
is
the
not
gun.
sophomore. Do you see how he's like kind of up in her space and just question?
And you testified about
He
why there was a
has a
room
reputation. I'm not
that would
surprised
appear
that
to
she
be-
doesn't want to be cross-examined by him.
parallel to her, and your indication is that the shot that would have hit her kidney or pancreas or whatever, she might have been bent over.
No. The
Good.
injury to the pancreas and kidney was on the right side of the abdomen,
Right.
and that went from front to back and exited the left back.
Just hold your ground,
The
dog.
one that was kind of along parallel to her body was on the left side of the body going up.
So why did you testify that one of the shots would have been so painful she would have bent over? What was that consistent?
Yeah, that was the one to the right side of the abdomen. And the reason I believe it's probable or, quite likely that would have caused her to bend over is because a subsequent shot was going sort of upward in the body. And it's hard to imagine, that wound going upward and then into the head unless she was bent over. So it's a possible explanation of how she was in a position to actually get that.
So she bent over and it would go upwards. Why?
Because if somebody is standing behind her, and there's no close range here, but at least a few feet away.
So she got shot, turns around, bends over, and then you're saying,
She could have turned around or not turned around, or I don't know if she turned around or the shooter's moving.
okay, did anybody ask you to look at the pattern of ejected shells from the blackout?
I wasn't asked to look at those.
Okay. So your conjecture, opinion is based on.
No,
purely
it's
the
not
wounds and trying to figure
conjecture.
out how that happened.
It's an
Yes, so I
expert
basically,
opinion.
I do the autopsy.
Not
I have
conjecture.
everything to do with the body. And at the time, I never heard anything about, I composed my autopsy reports
Right.
without any reference to the scene.
Okay. So let me move along to Paul for the moment, okay? And you indicate that the first shot would have been buckshot to the chest.
I believe that was most likely the first shot.
Well, because the second shot is basically executes him.
He would have fallen to the ground.
Right. And clearly he was upright when that first shot was made.
Yes.
Okay. And it goes in his chest. And would he have to be turned diagonally to the shooter for it to come out his left armpit?
No, not necessarily.
Well, if he shot straight on with
Yeah.
that buckshot, and if that was a
Yeah.
contact wound, or
No, it's a close range.
Notice how
Close
as she's
range.
talking, he says, okay,
Closer
to
than 3
try
feet.
to
Yes.
stop her from
Okay.
talking.
can't estimate how far.
I can't, you'd have to test fire.
Okay, so the chest shot, if it's straight on, wouldn't it just go right through his lungs and his heart? and kill him?
Yes.
Okay.
So this was shot at an angle across. So that might indicate that his body was positioned perpendicular to the shooter. Now, the shooter could also shoot from the side, doesn't necessarily shoot from the front. So we can't be 100% sure
So
about these things.
if you're the shooter and
Yes.
I'm Paul and you shoot me with that buckshot, if I'm faced to the side, would the results be consistent with your autopsy examination?
Yes,
Okay, and we know that some of those pellets, you think his arm was down by his side.
I feel confident about that.
Okay, and the reason for that is there are pellet holes in his arm, right?
No, that's not the reason.
He's
The
trying
reason
to
is because
reestablish
there's,
her
bruising
opinion. And she's like,
around
no, no, no.
the exit wounds. They're kind of shored exits. And then we have corresponding bruising on the underside of the arm. So it indicates that they were in close proximity at the time the pellets exited and then re-entered. Because if there was a distance, we wouldn't have the bruising around those wounds.
Okay, and do the pellets go through his arm?
Yeah, there are pellets that exited through the arm.
And so there's little pellet holes on
Correct.
his arm exiting.
Yes,
Did you see a corresponding entrance wound with the pellets?
yes, the entrance pellet wounds were on the inside of the arm.
Right, and then they go out, and I think they struck things after that, as far as you know.
I don't know what happened to them after they left the body.
So either the
'Cause she
shooter
wasn't there.
is to his right,
Yes,
shooting across,
yes,
okay, and you think that shooter would have been closer than 3 feet, but you can't say how
Right.
close.
right. He could have been to his right, or Paul may have turned his body in that perpendicular manner yes,
But either way, there would have been almost immediate bleeding. Well, not a fatal wound. There would have been immediate bleeding from that wound, correct?
there would have been bleeding. It's hard to say how much, but certainly I would expect some bleeding.
But if there were footprints found halfway into that feed room, and those are Paul's footprints, would that indicate to you that he had stepped in his own blood?
Oh, that's certainly possible.
Okay, not inconsistent with what you have.
Correct.
And that second shot
Y'all, I hate to leave you. I will
would
be right
have
back.
come,
I've got to go look for something
I mean,
for Dr.
as
B.
I understand it,
Be right back.
Mr. Barber, can you take your coat off and come here, please? Hate to do this to him, but
Oh, gosh. I can't leave for
really
this. It's
do
going to
it
have to wait.
myself.
Are they going to make him? Are you going to make Mr. Barber crawl around on the floor? Are we going to get more crawling around? Poor Mr. Barber.
So if you would step down here, with permission, Your Honor, may she step down? Okay. And what I'd like to have you do is we need to not block these folks over here. Let's see how we do this. That gentleman right there.
me to stand back here?
That would be good. And he's fine.
He said we can't
You're fine.
block
Unless
these
I get in their
folks
way.
over
Let me see
there.
If I can avoid not falling over. Okay, so we've already talked about this.
Oh, my
wound.
goodness.
Yeah, left side. Okay. This wound, which goes in right about here. Show the jury where the wound went in.
Yeah, it was like between the sternum and the left nipple. So kind of right over there.
Right over there. And Mr. Barber's a little bit taller. He was, I think, 5.
Yeah, I measured his height. I don't recall.
We'll talk about that in a minute, but I believe Mr. Barber's a little bit taller than he was. But I think we need to know that because I'm going to ask you to sort of chart things out. So the
He's just
entrance
talking.
wound is here.
He's not answering questions
consistent
or
with
asking
him
questions. He's just talking.
being- How about Mr. Barber, turn just a
Yes,
little
they
bit
can
that
use
way.
a diagram, but they're not
So
going to.
the shot would have gone like this.
Yes. That's
I don't know who's
approximately
coughing, but
correct, and
It's very loud in the mic.
slightly front to back.
Slightly front to back,
Right,
about
but
like.
mostly it's right to left. Is
Okay.
right to.
How about raise your left arm for me, please? So, and his arm was not raised, but I want to point out, it comes out, we're going to see some pictures in a minute.
This is why it's going to take forever.
Okay, turn it a little bit this way.
This is why.
So it would have come out right under his arm,
Yes, we do have the exit pellet wounds there.
and we also have wadding, do we not?
Yeah, we have wadding stuck in the underside of his
Okay.
left armpit.
And then it goes through his arm,
Yes.
still coming front to back.
Well, it's left to right, but there is a slight front to back because we have some exit wounds on the back.
Okay, so if I told you this is a narrow room, have
Okay.
you seen any crime scene photos
From here? No.
from,
Oh, yeah, from this case, crime scene photos in my career, yes.
in this case?
I really didn't, I may have been shown a very small photo, like a couple of weeks ahead of trial, but I didn't form any opinions
Okay,
based
so
on
if I
that.
told you that small room, the gap between some stacks of dog food here and the wall and the little thing over here is maybe 3 to 4 feet. And this buckshot goes through the back window on this very narrow, very small. So that would be consistent with what you're saying. Some of the buckshot comes through, and that was buckshot that you shot with in the chest.
Yeah, it was shot, I don't remember the exact size. Buckshot is usually bigger, but
Okay, assume I'm not
Yeah.
misleading you, okay?
Right, some shot.
Buckshot goes through and hits the back window.
Uh-huh,
That leaves holes in the window and hits in the door, the window frame, and goes out. One of them embeds in a tree back behind. So that is consistent with your findings, correct?
yes.
That first shot. I'm sort of intrigued. Is there anything about the exterior of this shot? What's beveling? You know what a bevel is?
Let her go sit
Yes,
down.
Of course. Beveling is a pattern of defect through a bone. So when there's a gunshot wound that, for instance, goes through, let's say we could get an entrance wound over here and an exit wound over here. We're talking about handgun wounds generally. The way, when there's basically a hole in one side of the
Let her
skull,
go sit down.
I can tell which is an entrance and which is an exit, even without looking at the skin. Okay, so for instance, if I get skeletonized remains with a hole through the head, I can see which is the entrance and which is the exit because the bone bevels in a characteristic way, depending on the direction of the bullet.
What is a bevel?
Yeah, bevel is like an angled chipping away of a hard surface.
So if a bullet goes through, and I guess the head is all bone, right?
Well, it's like a solid bone. Right?
Right, so you can tell this is the entrance because, I mean, is it like,
It's the entrance, on the outer table of the
Her-
skull. It's a smaller hole.
No,
On the
having her
inner
back
table
to
of
the jury
skull,
is so
it's a bigger
off-putting.
hole. So the bone is
The
beveling
jury
out
box is back
outward
behind her,
as the bullet goes out.
back
so
here,
it would
and her
bevel
back
in
is
on the
just
entrance
to
and
the
bevel out
jury.
on the exit?
because of the way the defense attorneys
Yeah,
are standing.
Well, bevel in,
It's
meaning
just
I-
so
sometimes
odd to
people,
have her standing
don't
there.
always use these words consistently, even
And I
forensic
hate it.
pathologists. But there is a
And it's
inward
rude to the jury.
beveling, but means it's kind of beveled outward.
And they're not going to
So-
hear any of her testimony,
Bevel.
so what is the point?
The
Outward,
entrance-
inside the word
Because
we see.
now they're just
something
arguing
would
with her.
indicate-
Wider, yes, it's
Wider.
wider on the inner table of the skull than the outer table.
And when it exits, do you have a narrower bevel, if you will, or defect on the inside than on the outside?
Yes,
That was a lot. Okay. So.
Oh my God,
was there-
I wouldn't
since
want
this
to do this
didn't
at
enter
all.
Bone,
I would be like,
is it
no,
beveling with the flesh?
No.
No, it doesn't bevel
Get a
because there's
dummy.
too much less.
use the chart.
And also just shredding. Frequently, we can't see beveling on long bones either. The skull is kind of a flat bone, so it has that characteristic.
Okay, and the second shot,
Excuse me for my sophoric
The-
explanation. While I go and
As I
ask
understand
very
it, you
specific and
indicate-
advanced questions. They
is-
know it.
can
The
you-
jury knows at
well,
this point.
First of all, assume that he is.
She should go sit. Her back is to the jury box.
So maybe we just forget about the feed room for just a minute, okay? So show the jury, please, where the initial, there's a shot, it's shot with a shotgun,
Yes,
and it is more than, since there's no stippling or soot or anything that would indicate a close shot, correct?
correct.
So more than 3 or 4 feet away,
More than 3, yes.
more than 3. And where is the initial shot? Where does it hit?
On the top of the left shoulder,
When you say the top,
the apex.
okay, are there pellets in here?
Yes,
In the apex?
yes.
And I'm going to show you an X-ray in just a minute and maybe demonstrate on Mr. Harper, where that hit. And they're shot in here.
Yes.
And you indicated you thought his
So I'll put
chin
it,
was.
the jury, I mean,
That's
yes, there
Yeah,
are jurors
this is
here that might be able to
something
see,
that,
but
I believe, not necessarily
It's so
have to be
off-putting.
bent, but I do think.
do you see
it
Mr.
is
Barber
at
leaning in?
least tilted in this direction. The reason being, if this is in a horizontal,
The judge, for those of you
direction,
like, the judge should stop
and
it. The judge
then
can't.
goes through his
The judge
cheek.
can't stop
Let's say
this. This
he's
is the
just
defense's
your
choice.
head- I'm sorry,
There's no
head
objection.
up. And
The
let's
def-
say it's just going through here, and
The judge
it
stopping
would
it
just kind of
would
hit like
cause a
over
lot of
this side of
problems.
his head.
The
Okay?
prosecution
So meanwhile,
can't really
it's-
object either. This
It's
is
kind of over here.
a
So-
defense choice.
And then it's. the
It's an
exit
odd
wound is
choice.
Back there. So.
But
at
it's a
least we
defense
have
choice.
A little bit of directionality like this. I don't know. If he was completely turned to the left, it would have gone through his face. But I think it makes the most sense knowing that a wound travels in a straight line, basically. Of course, these are pellets, so there's going to be a lot of
I'm not
destruction.
surprised the jury
But the
laughed
fact
when
that
Barbara's hair
his
got messed up
face
and she
was-
said sorry.
was
It's kind
spared
of,
from damage.
they're dealing with stuff that's so
Indicates
heavy
to me
that doesn't
he had
surprise,
his, head
nor
somewhat
does it
turned. I don't know
annoy
exactly
me
how
at all.
much,
It's
but
just,
that it kind of coursed
that's
the
a
top
kind of
the
light
left
moment
shoulder
amidst stuff that's
into
really
this
heavy.
left,
So you kind of look for
neck,
that
cheek area,
release a little
and then
bit.
exited the back of the head on the top.
Let me find the X-ray
I'm so
pictures
glad you
while
got
you're
your
standing
candle
up there.
yesterday. They're so fun.
Here we go. Good. Wait 1 second. Excuse me, Dr. Riemer.
Oh yes, Poot is not worried about social distancing at all today. He's all up in everybody's face. It's just odd. Also, since we're doing odd, for those of you that are interested, the limited edition Lawnard Love mugs are
I'm
up
going
on
to
the
show you
shop.
where you're standing right there, these
So,
pictures, and see if you can
that
identify them. And
exists.
if so, we'll put them in evidence, and then I'll put them up on the screen. So I'd like you to look at these 3 photos and tell me if you can identify these. Am I speaking loud enough for the court reporter? Am I speaking loud enough when I'm facing that way? Okay.
Yes, these are X-rays that were taken at the commencement of the autopsy.
Okay. Your Honor, I would offer defendant's exhibits. 111, 112, and 113.
No objection, Your Honor.
They're admitted.
So could I have, please, step over. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, that's much better. Okay, so let's see. Okay, let's see, 113, please. Okay, so this is his left arm, correct?
Yes.
And
yes, y'all, it is a
this
difficult
material
morning.
up here, we
I
see
didn't
these
get
little
all
dots.
the
What
fan
is that?
association tickets
Those
I
are
wanted.
shotgun
Today's a
pellets.
ticket on sale. We're
And
trying to
they
do all the
are-
things
Yeah, that's perfect.
and
And
coordinate.
so we see 1, 2,
a
3,
very busy
4,
morning.
5, 6, 7,
But we've got
8,
it.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, along that line, 20, along these would be pellets that would be along here, correct?
Yes.
And they begin at, is this his shoulder? I mean, the shoulder bone?
Yes, it's, no, the soft tissue of the shoulder. The soft
Yes,
tissue
okay.
of the shoulder.
Okay, I'll give you the
Yeah,
pointer, you
okay.
know what you're doing.
Yeah, this is the humeral head.
Which would be-
Humeral head, which
Should
is.
show on Mr. Barber where
Yeah,
that
this
is.
is the bone
humerus.
of the humerus. So our humerus is that long
It has a
bone
head.
from the shoulder joint to the elbow joint. And we can see that this is basically, it's not really perforating the bone. There may be some defect at the edge of the bone, but it's pretty much on top in the soft tissues.
Okay, and it goes on for a ways, and then if you would show me exhibit number 112. Okay, and would you focus on the upper right-hand corner, please? There you go. Now, that corresponds to this large picture, that orientation.
Yes.
Will you
Okay, so
stop
what is
holding the
this showing?
pictures up, Poot?
There are.
Come on,
um,
man.
Significant numbers of pellets also in like the left neck area.
Show us on Mr. Barber where that would
We have
be.
not
Yeah,
learned
so,
anything new
the
yet.
entrance is here and pellets are basically spreading, so they're included.
Nothing. We've learned
There are
nothing
pellets
new.
in the left side of the neck area over here, and then there's also some going into the brain.
Okay, and let me see if I can count those. So, I mean, are these part of what we looked at before?
Yes.
Okay, and how far down did the new one start?
It's a different view, so may not include all of them.
Okay, so, but a number of them.
Yeah, I mean, the purpose of the x-rays is basically to show what kind of ammunition remains in the body, if any.
Did you remove these pellets?
Not every single one, a representative number.
Okay.
A
So
representative
there's an
number.
exhibit that was shown to you by Mr. Waters of some pellets that you
Yes.
recovered, but that's not all the pellets you recovered.
That's all the pellets I recovered. I don't stay for days to recover each pellet.
At
It's
this
actually a lot
point-
harder than it looks. Here they look like you know exactly where they are, but you can fish for like an hour to find one pellet. It's
At
fairly
this
small and there's a lot of
point,
tissue.
I think
So you got-
confusion
I
is the
get a
goal.
handful of them and that's sufficient.
Did you keep the buckshot separate from the birdshot? Because this is birdshot.
What? No.
I don't think any of it was actually buckshot. Buckshot is very large. So they were all, I believe they were all collected together.
Okay, so you thought they were all birdshot?
No, I didn't make that conclusion. They're some kind of shot. I didn't make a
So you
determination.
didn't determine the.
Yeah, that's really the firearms. I'm the pathologist. It's the.
I'm not a
firearms
firearms
expert to determine
expert.
What
Poot?
kind of shot it is.
So,
I said
So
shotgun
I think the
pellets,
goal
and
is
that's
confusion.
Right.
Sufficient.
if previous expert testimony was that the chest was a buckshot and the.
I don't
head
know
was,
why.
Duck shot or some sort of bird shot.
He's going
you're
to
not
keep
gonna
going.
agree with that.
I really didn't.
She just said it. I'm not the
It all
firearms.
looked similar to me.
Okay,
Y'all, every
Um,
single time this defense
now-
team asks experts things outside of their field to make them say,
Let me
I don't know, or
see.
that's not my job, to try to undermine them, which
Exhibit 111.
can work for some jurors.
And can you,
But it's very awkward
I guess the
standing in front of this
lower
jury with
left.
her back to the jury,
well, maybe not.
trying
Let's start
to
with the lower left of this. Lower.
actually answer back. It's awkward,
left,
but his job
lower,
is to make
right
people
there,
uncomfortable.
This is the total picture.
Okay.
And so what does
She
this
said
represent?
Buckshot is big, but she
Yeah,
didn't
there's-
specify if
we
it
can
was
see
turkey
his,
shot or
his
bird
upper and
shot.
lower teeth
It
here.
was small pellet
Upper
shot.
teeth, the lower teeth. And so he actually did not have any fractures of his teeth. So the
That says
projectiles were
exactly
going
which way
behind
it
the
went.
teeth. His teeth were not all fractured out.
So would you show on Mr. Barber where these pellets would have been?
Which shows a lot.
Yeah, this is just a two-dimensional image. So they're anywhere between like, here and here.
I spilled water.
Okay.
It's hard to say based on a two-dimensional.
Okay. And I think, show us where you think the exit wound was.
On the right side of the top.
The back of his head.
The top of his head,
The top of his head.
toward the back.
Towards
Yes.
the back. And if you were to extend out the shoulder wound, the neck, the path of these pellets,
So
and then
awkward.
the exit wound, I mean, did you actually see an exit wound? Was there?
Yes, it was a blown-out exit wound
And-
of the skull, and that is how the brain left the skull.
Well,
It had
actually, his
to-
skull exploded, basically, correct?
Well, the skull, and there was a defect there. I could not reapproximate the skull, so there's a piece of skull missing.
Was there a bevel around that piece of skull?
We don't get beveling when there's shattering of
Shotguns.
the bone.
She said that like 3 times.
We'll pursue that a little bit.
I
later.
was
It's
trying
not-
to listen
it's not
and
a
run the live stream
typical
and buy
feature.
concert
You
tickets,
could
and I heard
potentially
that.
see something that you can say, well, this looks like a little beveling. But in my experience, that's very difficult to assess because there's so much damage and fragmentation of the bone.
Take that pointer, please, using Mr. Barber as a mannequin, and show us the path of that shotgun blast.
So it was going along here,
Yeah, he keeps saying, I'm sorry
And
this is so hard, and then he leans right into it being
into the-
shocking.
left side, I believe, makes most sense like this, and out the top of the right side of the head.
So if you, and that's what you say, at least 3 feet away.
Yes.
Okay. Let me have that pointer again, please. And if you would step right over there. And just turn a little bit this way for me. Okay. So your testimony is, and correct me if you need to step over here and correct the angle.
No, I don't like that.
Okay, well, show me what you like,
I like this straight,
right?
and then, because this is basically not, it doesn't look like it's going upward.
I don't know
It's
what he's
going
getting
straight
at
and
other
then
than to
entering
try
around
to get
there. So
points
we
of
have
possibility.
two distinct defects, a defect here and a defect there. So I believe the head was at least angled a little bit like that in order for the corresponding continuation of that defect to go in there. But I don't think it's going upward. I think looking at the
I don't know if any of
shoulder,
this
it looks like
matters.
it's kind of a
We'll see what
and
they
if it was going
argue.
upward, we wouldn't have as much.
We have to
neck as
wait.
we do.
We have
So
to wait
I
to
think
see
it's
what
more like straight
nuggets they pull out
on.
of this.
But that would still be coming upward at some angle, right?
No, I think it's more straight. I really,
Well, how does it come out the top of his head?
well, that's because if his
She's like,
head is
"Listen, Dick."
like bent like that,
Right.
then it's going to go in that direction. Yes.
If it's straight, it's
Poor
going to
Mr.
go
Barber.
here and then out the top of his head?
No, that's
Well,
not what she said, Dick.
It absolutely could. The thing about the neck, heads can be twist and turn, so it's not at all inconsistent with that. It's most reliable that we can look at the shoulder wound and see that it's kind of, it's very difficult to assess the angle from where you're standing. And that's only because the head can bend and twist. And so we can only know where it entered and where it exited. And it's possible the head could have been twisted or turned to correspond.
Would it be more consistent if he could turn your head the other way, Mr. Barber? Like that to get it out the top of the head?
That could be. However, we have a
Do you
defect
see
over
Barber's
here. So how would that
his
happen?
head
Pull
away?
your head back and keep it over in that direction. In other words,
It's
adjust him.
so
Back and
awkward.
then over that way.
Yeah.
Is that consistent with it
Tina,
coming
it's good to
in
see you, Fred.
here, going this way, and then out the
Yes,
top of the
I
head?
think that the head tilt to the right, as you've just demonstrated,
Right.
is perfectly consistent with that. However, because the hole here is here, I think even if his head's to the right, it would still be turned like
The
that.
one thing he's going to
Okay, now
succeed
that
in
makes
is
sense to me.
desensitizing
So-
the
Right.
jury to how
So the
awful this
shooter
is, which isn't
would
helpful for
be
the defense, I don't think.
At least 3 feet away from that, right there, right?
Yes.
And would he have it up, or would he have it down, or?
It's hard to say, and that's because the head can tilt. We
Can
only
move.
have one area
Your head
of an
moves,
entrance
Dick.
wound here. It seems to be approximately horizontal, but it's
Dick wants to
impossible
put the
for me
shooter
to
as
say
far away as
whether
possible.
it's
I think that's where he's
entrance
going with
is kind
this.
of below him or at his level, or potentially above him with.
To make sure the
with
shooter
moving
is
over.
far
It's hard to know,
back.
and that's because people aren't necessarily standing up straight. And they also, the thing about injuries on the head and neck, there's so much twisting and bending possible.
Okay, Ms. Barber, stand up straight. You get the correct there? Okay, I'm sorry. So now what you tell us is basically from here back on his skull, if they can see, why don't you stand over there for just a second so we don't block him. From here back on his skull, and I've looked at your autopsy pictures, all this is gone
To the right side.
to the
Yes,
right
and there
side.
were fractures on the left.
Yep, he's trying to put
So
the
we know-
shooter
we know
further
it's
away.
going in a left-right direction.
Do you have a seat for a moment, please? Thank you. I may be done with you, but don't put your coat back on.
The
Okay,
jury,
if you go
did you
ahead and take a
see?
stand
They
again,
chuckled
please.
along with him. I may be done with you, but don't put your coat back on yet. And they all chuckled. Did you hear the chuckle? So,
Okay, let me
they are
ask you
chuckling
a
along
couple
with his
preparatory
stick.
questions.
which is why he's going to continue to do it. All
Are
of
you
us in
familiar
the
with
chat
his
can be
book?
like, ew.
Yes.
It doesn't matter
Okay,
what
it
we
is
think.
like
If they're chuckling along with him, he's going to
definitive-
keep doing it.
I'm told most pathologists have read this. And
Yeah, it's a highly respected book on gunshot wounds.
Okay, so if you go to page 228 in this book, sorry,
If jurors like a lawyer and are listening along with them, or even if something unusual happens in court, it's not uncommon that there will be a chuckle.
can you identify this as page 228?
I don't think this
in
jury
book?
hates Poot.
Those images?
Yes,
Oh,
28.
I don't think this jury dislikes him. So, but yes, it could be awkward laughter. It could be.
showing,
It could be awkward laughter.
state a copy of page 228.
It could also just be almost a hospitable, like, oh, you're trying to be funny. That's so great for you. Oh, that's very possible too. You can't really get into people's minds. I laugh when I'm uncomfortable all the time. Like all the time when I don't know what to do. I'm just like, great. That's fantastic. Goody. He wants to put the shooter further away because if you put the shooter further away, it's less likely that that all of the rest of the evidence right now goes to the shooter is someone that they know. Because they're within 3 feet, they have guns, there's no defensive
116.
wounds.
Is this a copy of what I
He
just
wants
showed
to
you out of the
back
book?
that up as much as he can, and he can't because there's
Yes.
stippling.
Okay.
There's just
John, we
fucking
can offer this into
facts.
evidence?
There's just fact. No, that's not evidence.
Says
How?
the state.
No, Creighton.
Admit it.
Thank you.
What?
Okay, could I have this on the screen, please? Can you do this for me? Would you show me the first 2 slides up top along with what's written there?
There's just a photocopy
so
from some page in a
The
book.
caption on this is show the sequence of events that
That's not
occur
evidence in this
at the
case.
muzzle of the
Okay,
firing of a
okay,
shotgun.
bro-
Note the large gas cloud that is partially responsible for the severe nature of the wounds in the
If
contact.
you
wound.
are trying
So
to
the
learn
first
law,
A is the
the
shotgun
rules
being
of
fired,
evidence are
correct?
suspended in a black
That's
hole
what it looks
in
like.
this
Yes, I didn't
courtroom,
read the
and I don't know what's
captions.
happening.
But now,
There's captions at the bottom.
are there
Yeah,
captions at the bottom?
so-
Okay. No, I don't think there are, but I'll show you the book.
Isn't it hearsay? Yes, without an exception. There's some textbook. Okay.
Okay, so I imagine that's sequence.
Did she write
I
the
didn't write the
book?
book.
No, that's what, okay.
So the sequence of a shotgun shell being fired are, the first one is it being fired. The second
Bring
one,
your own expert for this. Go
note
find the
large
person
gas
who wrote
cloud
the
that's
book.
partially responsible for the severe nature of the wounds on contact. And the third one is
Weird. This is
the
weird.
contact range. And then you see on the last one,
Waters. Do you know what
I
Waters
don't see them
said?
on my screen.
I'm
Do you know what
sorry,
Water
okay,
said?
Go down to the last two. There you go, C and D.
No objection.
You see I guess at the front end would be
I need more
the
coffee.
pellets and the gas would be preceding the pellets. Is that correct?
No, I don't think that that's correct. This is depicting contact range. It specifically says at contact range.
Right.
So pellets are not yet released from the wadding.
Okay, well, we're going to go a little bit further on that in a minute. Let me,
No, she said no.
Yeah.
referring again to, well, let
I
me
don't know.
ask you this question.
This is on the prosecution to object to all of this.
If this book says contact shotgun wounds of the head are among the most mutilating firearm wounds there are, you would agree with that?
Yes,
This isn't a
Extensive
contact
destruction
wound.
of bone and soft tissue structures with bursting ruptures of the head are the rule rather than the exception. Correct?
yes.
These are the wounds of which an individual said to
Oh
have
my
had
God.
his head,
Oh my God.
blown his head off,
Oh my God.
right?
Yes.
Oh my God.
In some cases, this is almost literally true. The skull may be largely fragmented and the brain pulpified. Large fragments of the cranial vault and cerebral hemispheres are often ejected from the head. The scalp is
Don't watch
extensively
this trial for
lacerated.
mock trial preparation unless
to
you want to
two factors.
spot the
The
issues.
charge of the shot entering
Only
the
for
skull
issue spotting.
and the gas from combination of the propellant.
I should throw papers in there.
What is the
Correct.
question?
Correct.
Does
Thank you,
this,
Creighton.
one pathologist told me, this is the Bible of gun wounds for pathologists. Is that correct?
Well, there's a lot of literature, and this is a highly respected primary source. It's not the only, but what are you asking me about?
Does the shot,
He's reading the textbook in for the jury.
are there two factors which contribute
He
this-
just wants to read it into the jury.
the things we just talked about, the shattering, perhaps even the ejection of the brain? Are there two factors? The
Textbooks are
charge of the
evidence now.
shot entering the
Textbooks are
skull
evidence
and the
now.
gas from combustion of the propellant.
Okay, well, he's actually discussing contact
Yes,
shotgun
ma'am.
wounds,
It was
and
just-
that's not what we have here,
So
but we have
objection
similar destruction.
Right, well, we're going
Foundation.
to talk about that. in just a
Creighton,
minute. But let
buddy.
me- This is about a contact wound. I agree.
Okay,
You have not indicated it was a contact wound.
correct.
We're going to talk
Foundation.
about that in a minute.
Okay,
But you can't read
the
into
shot-
evidence
okay.
the textbook
The
about
shot
something that
directly-
isn't what's here.
Does the shot on a contact wound
Object.
from a shotgun directly fracture the skull and
Fine.
shreds the brain while at the same time producing pressure waves that increase
Gross.
the severity
We're
of these
here.
injuries, as well as ejecting the brain tissue?
yes, it frequently happens that way.
Okay. The gas entering the closed chamber of the head expands rapidly, adding, does.
Why?
I'm sorry,
Why
this
are we
question,
here?
I'm gonna object.
Why does no one
Does the gas
object?
entering the closed chamber of
What
the head
universe are we
expand
in right
rapidly,
now?
adding to the pressure waves, acting on the
Ew.
bony framework of the skull? The only way for the skull to relieve the pressure produced is to shatter.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
And is there a question? Or do you just want to keep reading in a textbook that has
So-
nothing to do with fucking anything?
It's your opinion that, well, let me ask you this. If the shotgun muzzle was 3 to 4 feet away, would gas have entered the body?
Well, it's still a very destructive wound. In my experience, There is still a huge amount of energy that would enter the head from a shotgun wound, even if it's not contact.
Okay, and perhaps I misstated the question.
You didn't state a
Would
question, you just read a
gas,
book.
Just a yes or
Yeah.
no be fine. From 4 feet away,
Ew.
enter the body and be
She didn't
destructive.
say
Yeah.
4 feet.
I don't know if it's gas that's causing the destruction, but there must be some amount of energy that's causing this destruction, because a shotgun wound to the head, no matter what the distance, causes. But whether it's due to gas or not, I really can't answer that question. This is not something I've done not experiments like this as in the book.
But this is
He's
what you
trying
said,
to move the distance.
Correct.
Well, it's a good source, but, I don't know whether gas would be responsible for the destruction of the skull from a few feet away. There is destruction of the skull. I don't know if it's attributed specifically to gas or to other factors.
Because she's
So
saying
I really can't
that
answer that.
book is
And
saying
if he
it's
says that, that's
contact.
fine. But I
She's
don't
saying this is a
know. He's talking
contact.
about a contact wound. I can't not necessarily extend that conclusion to what would happen a few feet away.
'Cause
But
she's
there
a
is
fucking
frequently
scientist,
destruction
Dick.
of the head.
I understand that there was
you don't.
massive destruction of the head. I'm just trying to get my arms around the definitive work on, one of the definitive works indicates that the most instances, the vast majority, that kind of destruction is caused by gas on a
Creighton
contact
should
wound.
object.
Well, this is a mechanism that he's describing based on experimental data. And I'm a forensic pathologist. I've not performed this kind of experimental data, and nor would I.
She's like, I've done 5,000
extrapolate from
autopsies, and
his
I'm not
conclusions
extrapolating from
about
your
a
book.
contact gunshot wound to whether the same amount of gas is produced at a distance.
Well, ma'am,
Get it, girl.
and Dr. Riemer, we can walk through this, but
She
these
just
are
walked
based
you through
on-
it twice, Dick. You just don't like what she said. But what
These
she's
are
not going to
based
say.
Not on some experiment, but actually on people that typically shot themselves in the head, contact wound with a shotgun. Would that surprise you?
Well, these are depictions of.
Dick, you are
shotguns
not.
being fired.
You are
Yeah,
not.
Contact shotgun wounds to the
Ew.
head cause
He
massive
is going to argue
destruction,
that
and
this is
a lot of that is
self-inflicted.
from
Or
gas
argue,
buildup.
can it
Okay,
be
that
self-inflicted?
we're on the same page.
What are you trying to do here? Ew.
So it's your position, there's a lot of energy when it's fired from 3 or 4 feet away, hits the shoulder.
3. She
hits
said
the neck,
3.
comes through and hits the
Objected,
head,
it misstates
the
as
head explodes.
testimony.
correct?
Yes.
And have you had
I didn't
A
say he's
number of
suggesting that.
autopsies done
I'm
of
worried that he's going
victims
there
whose heads have
based
exploded
on the
as a result
book
of a
he's
shotgun?
quoting.
Yes.
Okay. And many of those were contact suicide wounds?
Yes.
This is my concern.
Have you ever had one, and we can talk about the details of that, where someone was shot from 3 or 4 feet away?
No,
No
she
direct,
needs to
no
keep correcting
initial
him.
contact with the head. You would agree, no initial contact. with the
Creighton can object, misstates
Correct.
testimony. She
It
said
goes to
3
the
feet.
shoulder, the neck.
He keeps saying
and then the
3
head
or 4
explodes.
feet,
Have you
3
ever
or
had
4
one of
feet,
those?
3 or 4 feet.
Yes, these are very dynamic, and he still actually had a lot of his head there. Sometimes with the shotgun wound, the entire head is basically, you don't really see very much up above like the teeth. So this was, there was obviously horrible destruction of this skull, but his face was intact, and frequently a contact causes fractures of the face. So, I don't see any evidence of contact range discharge on the left side of the neck. So it was not my conclusion. That was not my opinion that this is a contact.
Because it's
shotgun
not a
wound.
contact
Well, let's talk a
shotgun
little bit
wound.
about this. Your position is the energy by a shotgun blast.
Notice how he
goes
keeps
through
saying
the arm,
3 to 4 feet, 3 to
through
4
the
feet,
neck,
3 to 4
and
feet.
then up to the brain, still had enough energy. Is it the energy caused by, is it pellets going into the brain?
Yes, well, not just pellets, but there's
questions
also
are so hard to
fracturing
follow.
of the base of the skull, which is a bone that holds underneath the skull. And that fracturing with sufficient force can actually push the brain out.
And
So
not
it's
only
a
could-
variety of mechanisms that could contribute to the destruction and the loss of brain tissue.
A variety
not
of
only
mechanisms.
pushes, it fractures the skull. In this case, the brain was brought to you in a separate bag because it ended up laying at his feet. It went up in the air and then plopped down at his feet, correct?
Yes.
Okay, the entire brain.
Dick apologizes.
Most of it, yeah, except
to
for
the
the
jury.
brainstem.
And then
Exploded
leans
out
into
of his
this.
Yes.
And the skull was at least almost destroyed around where you say the exit wound is, correct?
Yes.
Now, you've indicated the state did not show you any crime scene photos, correct? Or-
Yeah, I really didn't look at them. Yeah. I mean, they might have said, oh, here, this is a picture of the wall, but I didn't look
They're
at
not
them. And they were
needed for her.
thumbnail size. So this is a couple of weeks before trial.
Okay,
She
now
doesn't need
we,
crime scene photos. She's the pathologist. She didn't
if you
ask
would
for
put
them.
back up exhibit number, here we go.
Oh, I'm so annoyed.
Exhibit number,
This is why this is taking so long. He said it was going to be an extensive
112,
cross-examination.
please.
Silly me for thinking he would only ask questions that are logically connected in my brain, not his.
No, I don't
He
think- is that 112? That's the
has
chest. I
wandered
apologize.
far fucking
Um,
afield.
113.
Brittany said, "Happy Valentine's, Law Nerds. Law Nerds, I love being with you all, even though I'm annoyed at the poot at the moment, which is
Focus
why
on
I
that area where the
released
pellet
a
circles
limited
in
edition
the,
mug for today
yeah,
on
that
Law
right
Nerd
there.
Shop. Maybe it'll just
So,
soothe our nerves."
At his shoulder, how big a
Poot did not find
spread
himself
is that?
overnight,
How-
Marissa.
I mean,
Sure didn't.
as it comes in, is it 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches, that wound?
I didn't measure the spread of the pellets.
Okay, so how about? I
Alley Cat,
apologize
have
to
a
the
good
jury,
day
this
at
is pretty
work.
graphic. How about pull up 109?
The aw shucks approach is super fake and borderline creepy. Some might find it that way. Some might not. I do. You know how I feel about it. But it really is clear that it's just an act. And
Okay,
he
so
tries
this
to
depicts
like lure
a very
these
big wound in the
witnesses in,
shoulder,
like,
correct?
oh, I'm just going to try.
Yeah,
And then
that's
he's like,
a
this
typical
textbook says this.
Appearing shotgun entrance wound.
Okay, and would you come down here for just a second, please?
Holly, I was very distracted by Alex Kleenex use yesterday because he kept wiping his nose with it and then putting it back on his eyes. So yes, I found it distracting as well. Kath said from earlier, it looks like they're having a chat at a cocktail party. The way they were standing in that awkward circle was so weird. It was so weird. It was
You're
just,
right.
it's just an odd, this courtroom has gotten strange.
Request that defense take exhibit and address before the show to the jury.
I apologize, Your Honor.
Don't show those
And this
photos.
is exhibit number. Got multiples of these.
Austin with an
What's this exhibit
observation.
number? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
109. Okay, yeah, here it is. No. I apologize, Your Honor. I got ahead of myself.
I'm flipping through all these really graphic photos in front of the jury, Your Honor. It's fine.
And
Rebecca turning in from New Zealand. Good morning for you. 3:30 a.m. I could never, unless I was still up. I do not do well waking up early. I don't do well waking up moderately early. I don't know why they
this
took
is
the audio.
state defense exhibit number 109.
For the replay crew, there will be
Have you seen that
timestamps
before?
down below, as
Yes,
always.
this is my autopsy photo.
Offered in evidence, Your Honor.
Submitted.
Could you put it up the screen, please?
I don't know if I'm missing Elaine. Elaine was also painful. Poot's painful
Now-
in a different way.
If we look at this photo, we see this is the entrance wound,
Yes,
and then it goes in here, correct?
that's correct.
So, but this is a much larger wound than the next one in line, is it not?
Well,
Marie,
That's
thank you
okay.
for the super chat.
Well, let me ask you this, in
Love you
terms
with
of
all my
understanding a
heart,
shotgun.
totally in.
A shotgun
Touche.
pattern, as we saw in the photo, starts out basically the size of the shell, right? But if you just answer the question and then you can explain. Does it start out as the same size as the shell?
yes,
Okay. And as it goes forward, the pattern expands, correct?
yes,
Okay. And it continues to expand even after it hits something, correct?
yes.
Okay. So now please explain to me why this wound, and it looks like it's, I mean, if you use me on my left shoulder, what is the,
Yes. I'd be delighted to tell you why this entrance wound is larger than this, even though what you said is correct about the spread. And that's because the entrance wound to the left shoulder, it's not straight on perpendicular. If it was straight on perpendicular, then we would have a smaller hole. But this is going in a tangential manner across. So we're not really looking at a perpendicular, entrance wound that's going to make a round hole. So as it's coursing along the top of the left shoulder, we get more of an oblong hole. In contrast, its continuation into the left side of the cheek is kind of straight on.
I'll
at
let you
90
explain in a
degree
minute.
angle.
She's like,
So
and I
that's
will.
why that was smaller. So there was nothing about this that was inconsistent with what I would expect from a shotgun wound.
so tell me, so you're saying this second hole was made in this direction? Is that what you're saying?
I just said that was a continuation of the logical sequences. It went through here, it's causing a lot of destruction, and then entered the left side of the neck.
So that big wound is because it's in a different direction than the small wound, is your explanation?
At a different angle
Right.
along the surface of the skin.
Okay. And there's no pellets in his face, are there?
She's testified in
There
court
were
so
some
much.
pellets that we saw in the
She is
excerpt.
not.
But not in his face.
She is
Not in
not
the front of
unfamiliar
his
with this
face.
type of lawyer.
So
There are lots of lawyers who are
as it
this guy.
continues on, is there any evidence that it expands even more?
Well, it did cause, there's so much destruction, we can't exactly, have a single, easily tracked path. Because when the skull is involved, there's so much expansion, usually either from gases or just from the blast of the projectiles, that we can't really track. It caused an exit on the right side of the back of the head with loss of the brain and lots of skull fractures, predominantly on the right side.
Okay. But you would agree with me, that wound appears to be much larger than
But you
the
would
next
agree
one.
with
Oh,
me.
absolutely, yes.
Okay. And
But
one
you would agree with
you
me.
have an explanation for that. Could the other explanation be that this is an exit wound and that is an exit wound? Could that be a reasonable explanation? I'm going to show you something in a minute that may assist you in making that decision. But is it a possibility?
Ask a question instead of soliloquying in the middle.
If
That is not, I do not believe this is consistent with an exit wound from a shotgun. There would be a lot more destruction because, it would be coming, it had to be coming from somewhere, right? Somewhere else.
How about a contact wound on the head, on the back, right back of the head? What would you expect to see on the bone structure of the back right of the head?
He starts a
if that
question,
was a contact
breaks in the
wound
middle,
on
and
the
then
head?
asks a different question. It's very
Well, I would not
off-putting.
expect the
answer.
brain to come out. We would have had opening of a lot of skull. We would have had a path through the brain, which is not at all what happens here.
So
Have I seen an Emmy extensive
if
cross?
there was
Yes,
a
but
contact
only
wound
when
and we
there's
saw a
some
moment ago, you agree
controversy.
that the gas would enter
over
first,
Wounds or type of
Explode the
wounds or
skull.
where the entry-exit
the
wounds
brain
are.
would pop out.
There's no controversy on this. He's making
Did you
controversy
find
where it doesn't
any
exist.
pellets in the brain?
Or at least I thought there was no controversy.
I don't remember if they.
He's
were from the
really
brain, but the
trying to
brain is
get to that
basically intact.
contact wound
Contact wound
testimony.
to the top of the head would cause,
But it contradicts what the
huge
crime scene
defect
says
of
too.
brain.
Right, because the gas going in on a contact wound would create such a pressure, as we just read, that the skull would explode and the brain would pop out.
No, I don't think that would happen from a wound that was going toward the brain from above. I think we would have just certainly destruction of the brain, but it wouldn't.
He is trying to
just
confuse
pop
her
out
or wear
because
her down.
It's in the path of fire. There's going to be
But it's
massive destruction.
Creighton's
of the brain.
job
It may end up
to
on the floor,
object.
but it's going to be in multiple fragments. So in my experience, doing this
You
for a
would
long
think-
time, I do not think that the brain would have popped out the way it did from an entrance wound on the top of the head.
Okay. Now, let me ask you to
He
look
could
at-
go, Creighton could start to object to asked and answered. Creighton could also object to Miss State's testimony. There are a couple objections that he has not gotten to, but Poot is trying to
Put-
get
and this
her
is
to
under
agree
seal,
to
And I would
shifts.
also, Your Honor, ask the other photos I put in be put under seal.
They're under seal.
Thank you. Would you put?
Courtroom's a lot more
defense
empty
exhibit
today.
Number 59, and I apologize to the jury for the graphic nature of this. Go ahead.
You're choosing to do it, and you don't have to
I would
because
like you.
the photos are already in.
recognize this.
you don't
Um,
have to do this.
I've
You're
not seen
choosing
this
to.
photograph.
So apologize all
Would
you want.
disagree with
but
me?
it's
That's
still
a
your
photograph
choice.
of, it's been testified, Paul Murdaugh
It does
at the
look-
scene
Yes.
and the way he was found. You've
I
never
don't
seen.
know how he was found.
Okay, but this is a photograph you've never seen.
I've never seen this photograph.
Okay, let me get one thing before I ask you questions about it.
That was the court reporter asking for more.
Okay, a couple things.
Deplorable freedom fighter
if
said,
you
I
would-
think the Emmy is holding her own, so why maybe Creighton is not objecting. That's also a strategic choice to allow Dick to seem like a dick and let the
Center
medical
on
examiner hold her own
his
because it's not
head.
hurting their case. It's just frustrating to watch, but also they have an eye on the jury. So they can see how the jury's
And,
responding to it and whether the jury's annoyed. If the jury's annoyed, you let it go,
make it a
unless
little
it's
bit
getting into things that
manipulative.
really aren't even close to not being evidence. Then you let them
So,
annoy
do
the
you
piss out of the
see-
jury.
A sort of semicircle defect in the skull right here. You see where I'm looking?
Do it again.
Right here?
I do see a defect, yes.
Right, in the skull,
Yes.
semicircle.
It does have a semicircular.
Okay. Can you determine from looking at the photograph, any beveling?
As I said earlier, beveling is not really too reliable when we have so much destruction of the head. But if you're asking me if that could have been a contact shotgun wound to the top of the head with a kind of curved entrance, I would expect to see soot. We always get soot from contact wounds, and it's deposited on the outer table of the skull. So there is no burning, no soot on the outer table of the skull to
Did you
support that.
take an autopsy photo of this area of the skull?
Well, when he came in, I do believe I took an area of the skull, but it may not have caught that.
Okay.
perfectly.
Did you shave his head?
No, I didn't.
You did shave Maggie's head for a head wound, correct?
Yes.
Maggie's skull was
And
still
why didn't you
intact,
shave his
sir.
head? To examine this, you would agree with me, had his head been shaved, you would have had a better look at this wound.
Oh,
Well, I believe that.
He's going the
my
self-inflicted route. This is not a
assessment
good
of it
argument.
Was correct.
these are
And
catastrophic
without,
injuries.
Usually shaving is along an entrance wound, not an exit wound. So I determined this was an exit, and shaving is not done on exit wounds. I shaved Maggie's because that was an entrance wound, and it gives me an opportunity to see the margins of the entrance defect.
I guess what I'm asking is, you decided that was an exit wound without shaving the head, without looking for stippling, without looking for because you would agree with me that to do that effectively, you have to shave the head.
Because it's an
To
exit
observe
wound.
marks on the skin.
Very
yes.
clearly
But
an
also
exit
there would
wound.
be soot on the outer table of the skull.
Well, did you look for it? You apparently had already decided.
Yeah, well, I did look. I didn't take a picture from this angle necessarily. I did take a picture after I.
She's
from
done
the-
over
from the top of his
5,000
head.
autopsies. And he's like, you apparently already
My
decided.
determination, based on my experience,
Whoa.
was that the entrance wound was over here. Doesn't mean somebody else cannot disagree with me. But that's my opinion.
Somebody could disagree with you, and that would be a reasonable disagreement.
No,
Well, I would say that people can disagree, but that doesn't mean that.
they're right.
Doesn't change the truth.
You would also agree with me, though, that your notes contain no mention of the lack of or presence of stippling or soot on that part of his head. You never looked for it, did you?
Well, I look for it. I look at all of the wounds, and if there was, I would have documented it. But I don't document the absence of soot or stippling on what I determined to be an exit wound.
And I don't see any note of yours where you examined that exit wound in detail. I mean, shaved his head, looked for some distortion that would be inconsistent with the conclusion you'd already come to, correct?
Well, I came to the conclusion based on my examination of
Trying
the
so
entire
hard to
Okay,
force.
and as this book indicates, the vast majority of this kind of damage, the vast majority, I mean, they say most probably, almost certainly, is a contact wound to the head that injects the gas, which explodes the head. Is that not true? You want to
No,
read something?
I do think that you're kind of
Misstating it,
you're extending his statement. He's describing
misstating, extending,
he's describing
reading into.
contact gunshot wounds to the head. Actually, a contact gunshot wound to the top of the head like that, like I told you, it would have caused fragmentation of the brain, not ejection of the brain, based on my experience. And then there would be a lot more, we would have a lot more fragments. It would never have just left the rest of the skull intact. We would have had fractures of the face. There's massive amount. I don't believe that the fractures of his skull are consistent.
She's not
with,
having it at
that
all.
being a contact shotgun wound. I understand that that is a massive destruction of the head from shotgun wound.
And the jury can
But
see
in this
that.
case, we do have the brain basically left intact. We don't have a path through the brain.
The
It's a
prosecution
very
knew this was
dynamic,
coming
there's gases,
because
there's
they
pellets,
asked
there's fractured
law
bone.
enforcement about whether they
But
considered
in my
whether this was
opinion, based on my
killing and then
experience, that
self-harm.
was not
And
an
law
entrance
enforcement talked about
wound,
it a
and that
lot.
This was not an exit.
when they went over the
You
crimes.
indicated, I looked at your autopsy report, that well, first of all, do you believe this was caused by pellets entering the brain cavity?
Starting and then going
I think
backwards
it's
is
a
so annoying.
combination of different things. I don't think it's from pellets specifically.
What was it?
I think it's from the gas buildup in the brain and fractures of the skull, and that just basically a lot of gas buildup. in
So,
the head.
where did those gases come from?
Yeah, it's a huge amount of energy from a shotgun.
I'm sorry, if you'd answer my question, where did the gases you just testified that caused this destruction come from?
From the
Energy.
shotgun wound.
A shotgun wound you testified was created by a weapon that was more than 4 feet away. Traveled through the air, traveled through that shoulder wound,
Yeah.
traveled through the neck, and then exploded his head.
It's not just gases, but it's a combination of gases and the
Force,
the pellets
energy.
as well.
But there would have
Pellets.
been a significant amount of gas involved to explode his head.
Yes.
And there would be pellets, would they be present in the brain after that brain exploded?
The brain, the pellets may not have reached the brain. The brain may have been
I
ejected just by
bet
virtue
you
of
they have
the skull
they have
fragmenting
somebody who
and base of the
contradicts her
skull,
opinion
pushing it up.
to argue that this
It's
is
not
self-harm.
possible for me to
I imagine
say
that that's where
exactly
this is
why the
gonna
brain
go.
came out here.
But you would agree with me, based on the literature, it's much more common for a contact wound where the gas goes in contact to explode the head.
Well, in my experience, a contact shotgun wound could cause this type of damage, but it would frequently cause even more damage. Like a lot of times there's just massive destruction of the entire head. At least the front of his face where bones were intact.
I hear what you're saying is that it would have produced massive destruction, but it would have always included massive destruction of the face.
Okay, well, let me tell you, there are other reasons that why I concluded that the entrance
Tell
wounds
us.
were here, okay? We have basically a bunch of tight pellets over here.
Right.
If they would be more spread out if the entrance wound was here. By the time it got to here, there'd be a lot more pellets over a wider area.
How many more?
Well, it would, I'm not saying more pellets. I'm saying there would be a wider spread of pellets. This was still in a relatively narrow range. It was along the top of the shoulder. So,
From my head to my shoulder on a direct line.
yes.
How far is that?
Well, honestly, the spread would not, I don't believe they would have been as tight along the shoulder. I think we also would have had a larger defect probably on the.
A larger defect
Yeah, look.
between here and here?
Every single
She's like, look,
shotgun
sir.
wound and gunshot wound, they're each a little bit different. So a lot of this is judgment and assessment at the time of the autopsy.
Well,
And it's not theoretical whether there's gas buildup or not gas buildup. I can see this is a shotgun wound. We have pellet
She's getting
entrance
annoyed, which
defects
plays to him
around
though.
this large defect.
Okay, pellet, you just told me you couldn't do a bevel assessment on skin. How do you know their entrance rather than exit on the skin?
Well, I'll tell you.
I could.
And the reason is if
Now she's
pellets are
starting to get
going
annoyed.
through the shoulder, we wouldn't have a big, large, oblong defect. We would have holes from the pellets, not an oblong ovoid
But it
defect.
works to his
So
advantage
you'll
when the witness
recall
gets
on his
frustrated.
arm,
Because it's like, well,
Paul's
why is she
arm,
fighting with me? If
those
it's just
pellets,
science,
they
why is
came
she
from-
arguing?
And then along here, we just basically have pellet exit wounds, and we don't have that on the shoulder. We have basically a larger
She's like, it's
confluent
obvious.
wound that was not caused by individual pellets.
Okay, well, let me ask you this then. If you can take that picture down, please.
Yeah, it's not my opinion that is, the entrance wound is to the top of
And
the head.
could you put up, no, we don't even need to do that. I don't need to see the picture. The chest shot goes through his chest, comes out under his arm, right?
Yeah, on the left side, yes.
The left side comes out under his arm. And what do we have? What do we have on the inside and outside of that arm?
We have pellet,
Coming in and out.
Yeah,
We have a
he
pattern
is.
of
It's
pellets.
his,
Yes.
that's what he's
Just
doing.
like the pattern of pellets that you're talking about.
He's got an
what you
expert
say,
that probably has a
exit wound here.
contrary
Exit wound
decision,
From about the same distance, pellets.
but it is getting on her nerve.
From the same distance.
This is, we are a
Pellets.
long way from
Correct.
herassing the witness.
well, there are pellets in the
In a
shoulder.
legal sense,
but
we
are
have
a long way from it.
Like a ovoid defect
long
at
way.
the top of the left shoulder.
He's
They're not a
questioning.
bunch
This
of
is
individual pellet wounds.
a
We have pellets
cross-examination.
embedded in the tissue. But the actual defect, we don't have a defect like that on his arm, even though it may be the same distance. And the reason is because the pellets are exiting, but each one is going through the left arm individually. Okay, whereas if this was the entrance at the right side of the top of the back of the head, it's a good thought, let's think about this. And if it was coming through the head, regardless of what happened to the brain, and then exited here and then went along here, we would have a lot more individual pellet wounds on the shoulder as opposed to a large.
If he doesn't
huge,
have an opposing witness, then
big
this is all
area
a
of
gigantic waste of
skin
time.
and
That is
subcutaneous tissue
ridiculous
loss.
to do.
Pellets don't cause that type of damage on their own.
So you and I both counted something between 30 and 40 pellets in that
He's
shoulder.
trying to get her to say
Right.
it had to have been a contact.
Something like about
gunshot
that.
Do you know
wound.
how many pellets are in a duck shot or bird shot 12 gauge shell?
No, I don't remember. That
So
is
you don't
something.
know whether that was 90% of the pellets or 60% of the pellets or 50?
No, I do
Does
not.
that make a difference to you? How many
No.
pellets that were fired ended up there?
Ask a question.
No.
But you're saying just because the wound here is bigger and the wound in his chin is smaller, doesn't mean the shotgun pellets spread out, right?
You're arguing.
They spread out and they don't contract. You would agree with me?
Arguing to the jury.
Just please
I don't
answer-
really
please
know
answer.
whether to agree with you because I'm not understanding your question.
Okay, let me rephrase it. If you view that wound
His
on
questions are confusing.
his shoulder as the entrance,
His job
wound,
is to
and I believe you
confuse
have,
everything.
Yes,
you would agree with me that it is, whether it's coming across the top or whatever, it is a
I think
bigger
he
wound
switched tactics.
than the wound in his chin. In other words, are you saying
Compound.
that those were so focused that
This
as
is
they
compound.
went through or across the top, they actually contracted?
It's compound.
Okay.
I explained that this was larger because it was tangential across the top of the shoulder. So that's the kind of wound.
You agree with me that reasonable people could have a difference of opinion about these facts?
Yes.
Okay. Pardon me.
Do you see her face? She's just so over it. And the way he asked question is off-putting. He's not badgering the witness at this point. We're not there yet.
2 seconds to make sure I put everything in the evidence I want.
He's doing his job. It's off-putting the way he does it, but he's trying to. But it is the way he asks questions. He'll start with a question that he wants kind of the jury to hear, and then he'll go, let me ask you another thing, or let me ask it another way. So the jury hears what he wants them to say, and then he changes to ask. But I think he'll turn around and argue the whole thing is the answer. And that's very frustrating.
Apologize, Your Honor. I'm spreading.
Apologize to us, man.
I'm going to leave the rest of this until after his examination, if that's okay with the court. Thank you.
Ugh,
Thank you, Your Honor.
thank
Please
God.
support.
We're on redirect.
Your job is to do what? What do you do?
I do an autopsies in order to determine the cause and manner of death.
And when you're asked to do an autopsy, are you told
She's
any sort of
very
conclusion to come
frustrated
to?
with
Or do you
him.
just look at the evidence in the body
Very
before you and
frustrated
come
with
to
him.
whatever conclusions that body tells you?
Yes, and I examine the body and I come to a conclusion based on reasonable medical certainty, based on my education and experience.
So is it part of your job to look at crime scene photos and that sort of thing? Or are you relying on what the body tells you?
My job is to look at the body. That's my job. Crime scene photos, crime scene evidence, it's somebody else's project. That's not incorporated into my conclusion.
I want to talk a little bit. We've gone into a long examination about the top of the head.
Now he's throwing
And we talked
shade.
about soot and stippling. So I want to make sure the jury understands the difference between the two.
If it was
You
there,
saw
she would have noted
stippling
it.
on the chest wound to Paul. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Explain to the jury the difference between soot and stippling and what that tells you and what it doesn't tell you.
Okay.
You would agree with me as his thing.
The stippling is like the pieces of gunpowder that deposit on the skin when something is fired within 2 to 3 feet.
Not 3 to
from the
4.
barrel of the gun, not the
2
shoot
to
from
3.
the barrel of the gun. Soot is like real burning powder, burning marks from very hot gunpowder that's still basically burning, and it causes like a burning wound. That's the soot, and we don't see soot except within a few inches, depending on the
Contact.
gun. But we would like not expect to see soot further away from 6 inches. So the fact that we have stippling but no soot, we can fairly say it's not
2
closer
to
than
3.
6 inches, even though I know it's most likely within 3 feet.
All right. So you observed stippling on the wound to the chest for Paul, correct?
Yes.
Did you observe stippling anywhere else?
No.
All right. Did you observe any soot at all on Paul's body?
No.
And did you, particularly on the top of the head, did you observe any soot there?
No.
You were asked a
The
little bit,
defense
you had
expert, it
testified
seems-
yesterday.
It seems they're setting up the
about,
defense expert to argue
the tilting of
self-inflicted
the
wounds.
head and the manner in
which
which
is-
the shotgun blast went through
which
the
is-
chest, through the shoulder,
which
into
is-
the neck, and then out the top of the head.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable conclusion.
All right. And that still is your most likely conclusion, is that
That's
correct?
my most likely conclusion
All right.
to a reasonable degree of medical certainty. It
So
doesn't mean it's 100% the only thing, but that's my opinion based on my experience.
All right. And how many autopsies have you done?
Approximately 5,500.
And how long you been doing this?
Oh, 20 plus years.
Okay. Dr. Riemer and Professor Riemer, correct?
Yes.
Her credentials stand.
Um,
And no one has
you were
asked
asked
time
about
of
the
death.
book.
No one has asked time of death.
And-
You let him ask about the book.
All that discussion that
Creighton.
the defense counsel was talking to you out of the book, that was dealing with a contact wound, correct?
Yes, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with a book, but the discussion is regarding a contact shotgun wound.
All right. And when your expert opinion, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, you saw no evidence of a contact wound in this particular case with Paul, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, you were asked a lot, and let me ask you this. A lot of what was in that book, when they're talking about those contact wounds, they're exploring someone using a shotgun to commit suicide, correct?
Well,
Here we go.
frequently contact wounds do indicate a suicide, but potentially people can be shot by another also at contact range.
All right. And your
Yeah.
manner of death that you determined for Paul to a reasonable degree of medical certainty was what?
Homicide.
Homicide,
Homicide, which means?
death at the hands of another.
And did you see with this shot to the chest or the shot that went through the shoulder into his head, any evidence whatsoever that this could potentially be a suicidal wound?
I do not believe that it was at all consistent with the suicidal.
I
To a
imagine
reasonable
there's
degree of
a,
medical certainty?
Yes.
In your expert opinion?
Yes.
I imagine there's a defense expert. Look,
Let's
I know
talk a
it's,
little bit more
tremendously
about
distasteful. The defense is going
The
to
head
argue what they
wound,
think
and
they
you've
need
been
to
asked a lot of
argue to
questions
get Alec
about
off.
the possibility that this was a contact wound from the top of the head. Is that correct?
But
Yes,
then
In your
where
opinion, to a reasonable
do the
degree
weapons
of
go?
medical certainty
The weapons
is
don't
that
walk
it is
off.
not.
it was not.
in
Now,
that
let's talk about just very
situation.
quickly, without belaboring the point, some of the reasons.
We've
First of all, you saw
belabored
it was
everything,
soaked, correct?
Creighton.
Correct.
Exactly,
And
Rebecca.
then also with
Exactly
the
that.
damage inside
Exactly.
Paul's head, did you see
Exactly.
any evidence that would indicate that the force of did you see any
He's asking a
evidence
question.
that would indicate to you from the damage
Most of
that
his questions are
Paul
leading. It's fair, but
suffered,
I'm just so
that the
annoyed.
force of the shot was going this way as opposed to that way, going down from the top of his head as opposed to
Yeah,
going?
I don't believe that it was going from the top of his head down. I don't think the damage to the head was consistent with that.
Okay. And the with the brain, you said that the brain came to you in a separate container. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
most of it.
All right.
yes.
And did you, in examining the brain, did you see any evidence whatsoever that would have been consistent with the force of the shot, including the pellets and everything else going into the top of the head and into the brain that way?
No, I did not see any evidence of that.
To a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes,
Did you find any wadding in Paul's head cavity?
I don't think there was any wadding.
She already testified to that. But she looks now rattled.
You were asked a lot about the shoulder and how it was, in the picture you were shown, it was more, in that picture at least, it was kind of a gaping sort of wound. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And his shoulder was it kind of squinched up in that picture a little bit? I don't know if that's a technical term, squinch, but
Winched.
I
I mean, it works.
You mean the photograph?
the photograph that you were showing.
Well, I took a picture of his, the shoulder area. Yes,
Okay. And just so I understand, as opposed to a direct on wound and sort of the size of that, and then a wound that goes along the side of the shoulder, like you identified in this case, explain to the jury again how those are going to create different shapes of wounds.
yes.
Your
So,
Honor, not in response. He's asking her to explain again. That would be repetitive.
the repetitive's
Sustained
not
injection.
repetitive's not the right word. Asked and
was the
answered the
wound to
right
the
word.
shoulder, was that straight on or oblong to the side?
yeah, it was a tangential type of shotgun wound.
But he's rehashing his
With
direct
that
examination,
shoulder wound,
which is
that you've
not
identified
appropriate.
that
He
as
should
as the
just
entrance
be
wound, the initial wound?
responding.
Yes,
Would you still expect to find the pellets
Only
in that wound consistent with
responding.
what you saw in Paul?
yes,
He should only be responding to Cross. But Cross went on and on and on about contact wounds, so he has a right to ask.
Thank you, Dr. Riemer. Nothing further.
Oh, thank God. Oh, God, no.
Questions? I want to make sure I understand a couple of the answers you gave to the Attorney General. We previously established you did not see any real crime scene photos in this case.
Correct.
In many crime
Which is
cases,
not
or some
unusual.
crime cases, do you look at crime scene photos to help you or assist you in your opinions concerning certain things in the autopsy?
No, honestly, I don't. It's my job to examine the body, and I
Not be
come to my
influenced.
conclusions, and I don't really, look at the crime scene photos. I could potentially ask for them if I saw something very unusual, and I'll say, wow, how did that happen? Or sometimes I'll see an entrance gunshot wound that has, I'll assess it. There may be a lot of, glass around it, and I'll say, well, did this go through a window first? And I'll ask that question. I don't necessarily have to look at the photos. So there is information that I might ask, but, looking at the crime scene photos is really, not
Something you
something
see
that
on
I
TV.
do to help me come to a conclusion. Whatever's on the body, I will rely on what I see on the body, and if it fits with the crime scene photos, fine. But if not, I have my conclusions based on the body.
But you just conceded you do occasionally ask to see crime scene photos.
She didn't say
Occasionally.
that.
No, I don't ask to see
She
the crime scene
asked the
photos.
question.
I will ask to see, ask if something, like I just recently had a victim of multiple gunshot wounds, and I thought she may have been sitting in a car. Nobody told me anything like that because there was a bunch of glass fragments kind of on it. All the entrance wounds were to the left side and all the exit wounds were to the right. And then there were fragments of glass and kind
So
of
she asked the
car parts,
question.
banging into the skin. So I was like, was she in a car? But I don't ask to see the photos.
'Cause she
Really,
doesn't
I
need it.
don't, it's not part of, my evaluation of the cause and manner of death, doing an autopsy.
But like in this case, you had conversations with
Asked and
investigating
answered.
officers, did you not?
At their request.
Did you have a conversation with Sweat Agent Owens about the bruising on her calf?
didn't
Well,
say
I
it
did
was
not
bruising.
actually observe that at the autopsy.
She did not
So,
say there was bruising. He keeps trying to
I really
introduce it.
couldn't come to any
Stand your
conclusion.
ground.
And it's very possible that was dirt from a shoe.
She doesn't see
that
bruising.
was already gone by the time it came to me. I'm not autopsying the bodies at the scene. There's transport, there's movement into a body bag. But it may have been asked to me, but I distinctly said I didn't see that.
But you did have a meeting after the autopsy, and your report, with, I believe it's Lieutenant Owens with SWED, the chief investigating officer, and discussed
Oh, no, nobody's asked time of
did he
death.
show you the muddy print picture? of it?
Objection beyond the scope.
Yes, it
Objection
is.
sustained.
Okay.
The hand wave to the judge, Kay. It's, ugh.
Well, I think that's probably all I have. Thank you so much for being here
sure.
today. But an opinion is an
Ew.
opinion, right?
Ew.
Yes.
That's no question
Thank you.
pending. The thanks. It's
Ladies and
just,
gentlemen, we'll take a break for about 15 minutes. Please do not discuss the case.
thank you, Your Honor. I'm exhausted. Anyone else? Anyone else? Is it just me? I have a headache. I am tired. I am tired of poot. I am tired of poot, like doing the Putin, boot scooting, whatever. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Wait, well, let me ask you this. Blah, blah, blah. If I was this witness trying to follow his question and answer him, half of my answers would be, I'm sorry, what are you asking me? What are you asking me? His questioning is not clear. She held her ground because she's the medical examiner, but it's very clear. And at the beginning, I was like, where, if anywhere, is this line of questioning going? And now we know where this line of questioning is going. So let's do that and answer some questions. Here's where this line of questioning is going. They questioned her on a textbook that is very much about contact shotgun wounds. So the muzzle of a gun having contact with the body and then the wound. The direction they seem to be going in with asking that is this self-inflicted? And that is the word I am going to stick with. One, so it's not triggering for all of those of you in the chat that it would be triggering for. And B, because it is also triggering to the YouTube, even in this context. But they are trying to insinuate that this could be self-inflicted. It'll be interesting to see if they have an expert that is going to talk about that, because there is a lot of evidence missing if that were the case, including where did the guns go? Guns don't just walk off. If it was, then the wounding would look a little bit different generally based on the entrance wound coming this way, and a wound under the arm here. That wounding would be different. And there would be a weapon. And you heard them ask. We knew that this was a possibility, even though it feels absolutely disgusting. Like the human side of me is just, ugh. The lawyer side of me is like, I get where they're going with this. But the crime scene doesn't indicate that. And we heard law enforcement officers contemplate this and look with Paul to see if there was any weapon underneath him. So it's just a different scenario. But why chase Maggie around with a 300 blackout, and then where does it go? And then self-inflict, where does it go? Where do the weapons go? And if Alec came home and moved the weapons and that's the scene he stumbled upon, then why not tell police? Unfortunately, too many have this experience and tell police what they see and what they find. And that's not what Alec did. I'm trying to moderate my rage. So if you can see it, you can see me moderating my rage. That's not what Alec did when he called law enforcement. That's not what he said. And 911 asked him that. He was asked that by law enforcement, because of course he was asked that by law enforcement. They're going to continue, or they're going to ask about every scenario. And if that had been the case, he would have leaned in to the boat case caused this devastation. And that's not the direction he went at all, because that's not what the facts lead to. That's not what the bodies lead to. That's not what the evidence on the scene leads to. That's not what the crime scene leads to. And it still sits weird with me that his friend, Ronnie, who said he wasn't as much of a hunter as Alec, immediately saw the casings on the ground when he showed up at the scene, and Alec never mentions seeing them. If you are someone who hunts and he's used to these weapons, and others on the scene can readily and easily perceive those, when he's asked by law enforcement, did you see anything else? Wouldn't you say, I saw casings? I saw casings by Maggie's body. Did you get them? Doesn't mention it at all. This morning was very odd to me. But it seems it's harder when I can't see where the defense is going. And once we wandered into the textbook, which, by the way, he put a photocopy of in evidence, not proper evidence at all. You have to have experts testify. You can't just have a textbook page come in as evidence. It's not evidence of anything. It's as much evidence as the fucking pork and beans he asked about, but the prosecution didn't object. And now whatever page from whatever textbook is apparently evidence. You can use it to impeach a witness. You can use it to vigorously examine a witness, but it's not evidence. Everybody seems to have forgotten that. But whatever. Let's get to questions. Court is on break. Let's get to questions. I am just. I am just. If a defendant lies about one thing, can you legally assume he lied about other things? Rain 777, this is a great question. There's a jury instruction that talks about that, and they are allowed to, if they catch someone in a lie, they are allowed to disregard their testimony or give it whatever weight they want. Defendant, of course, is not testifying, but they'll hear that instruction with a witness. We heard that instruction during Dep v. Heard. It's going to be a similar instruction to that because model instructions. Dennis says, for someone who is so concerned about the schedule, sure is taking their time getting to the point. Oh, he only acts like he's concerned about the schedule when it conveniences him or when he can do it in front of the jury. Of what significance would a bruise be considering all of Maggie's gunshot wounds? What a bumbling man. He's grandstanding. I think they have a theory that someone stepped on her or that law enforcement, he insinuated much earlier in the trial that law enforcement had stepped on her or that somebody had stepped on her to like put her on the ground more or hold her on the ground more. So I don't know, but he kept saying bruise and she kept saying it might have been dirt, but there was nothing there. If there had been bruising, it would be noted on her diagrams. It would all be noted, just like Paul's cheek was noted. UK Netflix has already got a documentary coming up on the murders. I think that's Netflix everywhere. Shocking how quickly they can act to make a profit. They're not the only ones. There are lots of Murdaugh pieces. WJF said, please pray for the community of Lansing, East Lansing, Michigan State. I have a very difficult time addressing school shootings. My heart is absolutely broken for Michigan. And I don't also want to derail that because I have not seen the news other than seeing that it happened. I do not know any of the facts, so I cannot give any commentary other than absolutely what you said, which is my heart just goes out to a community that is going to be heartbroken. I don't think it's possible for this case to become more like a movie than it already is. It feels like somebody's scripting it. Put is mansplaining to a medical examiner that is more highly educated than him. Yep. Has a lot, but you saw towards the end, he rattled her and she started getting defensive. And that is what he wants to do. He wants to make people look defensive because if they're not wrong, why would they be defensive? Well, because you're yelling at them, Poot. But it can leave an impression to the jury that she's defensive because she's being attacked. So it just depends. I don't like his style. Alex's demeanor during the discussions of the actual murder sometimes feels like he's either remembering or envisioning. Makes me wonder if this was an accident that took a terrible turn. I don't know. So disgusted they choose Poot for this cross-examination. Poot chose Poot for this cross-examination. They choose the most crass and long-winded attorney for the most sensitive testimony. That was their choice. I quite like Barber. I thought his cross-examination of testimony yesterday was great. I quite like his style, and he was very effective in his DNA cross. And I think he's probably the most effective attorney on that team. Dick thinks he's effective with what he's doing. We'll see, because he might be. We might never know. It depends if we hear from the jurors or not. Does proximate cause exist in criminal cases, even with holes, as a killer is the only one that fits? That's a much longer answer that is much more nuanced, and my brain is very tired, but that is not what he's being charged with here. I'll answer it that way. That is not what he's being charged with here. And there are some types of crimes where proximate cause or the theory of proximate cause comes into a case, but this is not what we're dealing with here. I was able to answer it without going on a soliloquy about proximate cause. He is being charged with being the shooter, and the jury has to find malice aforethought. This is a first-degree murder, so the jury has to find that he, with malice aforethought, premeditation, pulled the trigger and did these things. Why do they call Dick Poot? Well, William, I'm so glad you asked. His last name is spelled Hartpootlian. And we had a lovely member of the chat who is local. That we have a lot of members of the chat who are local. And they had noted that I believe it was father, went to school with Poot, and his nickname in school was Poot. So we have leaned into that. Also, it makes sense, because otherwise I would just be yelling, damn it, Dick, the entire trial. And sometimes we must just. Linda Townsend, must the jury be unanimous in criminal cases? Yes. 12 one way or 12 the other, or there's no result. If they are not unanimous, it is a hung jury, like we've seen in so many other cases this year, including the Masterson case. So Question, won't this tactic of Poots backfire with a primarily female jury? It could, but I haven't gone and looked if the jury shakeup changed the makeup of the jury. It might have. I think 2 of the jurors were replaced with men, but I don't know if we're not as heavily female dominant at this point. And now, do you know what pebbling is? Pooch, she's the expert. He's coming off quite a bit misogynistic or condescending. To me, it just comes off as a defense attorney because he's been this way with other witnesses. This case has a heavy lean towards female witnesses. And that just is that the professionals in the area are mostly female that worked on this case. That's not surprising to me at all. But we've seen his behavior like this with other witnesses. I think this is his shtick. I do. The casual nature of this courtroom and disorganized counsel makes me deeply uncomfortable given the gravity of the trial. Kimberly, you're not alone. Hello, Gingy Probs. Unless there's bombshell evidence, I'm pretty firmly in the not guilty camp, not actual innocence. There's some real Ozark level shit here, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a very complicated explanation that we might never get. I don't know where we are evidence-wise. And again, feeling like, oh, he's involved is not necessarily enough to get us beyond a reasonable doubt. And that is something that we have to keep in mind. Brutality to the bodies definitely speaks to, I did them so bad, unfortunately. And I think when I first listened to that interview, I heard I did it so bad. And to me, it was like, oh, is he talking about that he was trying to shoot them and then it went all awry, or he didn't expect what a shotgun was going to do to a human or something? But then I'm also like, or is he talking about parenting? Or did he say they? The problem is in this case, almost everything you look at, it's like, could be this, could be this. And when it could be this, the jury instructions are going to tell this jury that if it's could be this, and one is guilt and one is not guilt, they have to go with not guilt. So could be this means that that's a not guilty verdict. And that is the reality of where we're at with this case. Alec was having a hard time. I mean, all of it was just distasteful. T-shirt needed saying I'm just. We'll have to do some I'm just merch. I realize I say it a lot. Sarah Witt, thank you so much for the generous super chat. The chat was right along with me when we're like, oh, is he trying to imply that this is self-inflicted? That's where we were getting. That's absolutely where we were getting. Where are the missing outfits then? And this, Karen, you make an excellent point. Where are the missing guns? Where are the missing clothes? Why is he telling Blanca that he was wearing a different shirt that was a Vineyard Vines shirt? Why is he telling Shelley that he was there 30 to 40 minutes? Why is he so confident about his timeline, but so off on his timeline in that first interview with police? I was at my mom's for an hour and a half. How does that timeline conveniently cover the time of the murders? Why did no one ask this medical examiner for a time of death? Questions. I have questions. I still think if I don't like betting, I like shopping. Betting feels like I'm throwing my money away. To not shop, I prefer to shop and know what I'm getting. But this case is kind of a powder keg for a hung jury. We'll see if something changes that for me. But that's been my concern about this case even before the witnesses started. Laura said, Emily, the grandfather who started the law firm, was famous for lying on the floor in court. Lying on the floor in court. Sorry, I read that wrong because lawyers. Being the victim of an accident could be a statement. I don't know. Or it could be regionally appropriate, expected, and the way that lawyers demonstrate their trials. This could just be that this is what happens in courtrooms across the area, and it is a different way to do it. It was so funny when there was a trial I did, and one of the attorneys was pro hoc vice, and that doesn't happen in criminal that much, but one of the attorneys was pro hoc vice from New York and was like, these courtrooms are just so formal. I'm like, it's Southern California. Our courtrooms aren't tremendously formal, or at least I didn't think they were tremendously formal because my other experience had been mostly in federal courtrooms, which are way on another level of formal. But after seeing courtrooms kind of across the country and being exposed to more jurisdictions, the orderedness of the Southern California courtrooms is much more formal and procedural than some others. It is not loosey-goosey, but also they're busy as fuck. And it has to be like, this is what we're doing. And you have to stick to the rules because we have to get through all of this. It's a different vibe. This courtroom is very informal in a way that is odd to watch. It's something else. The more they say he when referring to the shooter with the ME, the more it makes me think of Alec Murdaugh. That's a very fair point. I didn't even catch that. That's a very fair point. Poot is playing, I'm just a humble country lawyer trying to do the best I can against this brilliant prosecutor from the big city of Columbia. Yeah, and it's failing though, because he shows his hand so quickly. He's like, oh, I'm just trying to get this together. And then he's like, boom, 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 boom. He tries to make these witnesses comfortable and then goes in. And I don't think he's fooling anyone. I don't think he's fooling anyone. Yeah. Why the congealed blood? We haven't heard about that. We heard about it from the crime scene. They asked the ME, none of it. I don't know what other witnesses they're going to bring. I don't know if they have somebody in addition to the ME that they're going to bring in. I can't imagine, to talk about autopsies. Are we going to see them bring in Cousin Eddie? Why is this court break taking so long? Like, I just keep checking my stream to make sure that I'm not paused. This court break is taking forever. Who's next? Like, who's the next witness? Is it going to be CB Rowe? Are we going to hear from CB Rowe? Are we going to hear from Cousin Eddie? Can there possibly be any more law enforcement witnesses except for someone to do the timeline, which should be all day tomorrow if they're smart? And whoever the custodian of records is from GM, because we have some fucking questions, General Motors. Cheryl said yesterday during direct, the court must be coming back in just a minute. All right, the camera hasn't shifted yet. Yesterday during direct, Alec Murdaugh went off in a blank stare. Now that Poot is crossing, Alec is back to his performance. I hope the jury sees the difference. The jury might be so traumatized from the photos that they're not paying attention to Murdaugh's reaction at all, to be perfectly honest. Comedic relief is hard to come by during an ME testimony, but Creighton makes it happen. It is, but it's sometimes needed. And that's, again, when the jury and the audience kind of chuckles, it might just be a release of tension and not that they actually think it's funny. Lori Ann said, as a female scientist, nothing worse than a man's questioning my findings. I hope the women in the jury feel it. I'm sure they do. Your glasses, by the way, are fabulous, and I love them. Where's my cousin Benny when you need him? I mean, somebody needed to object today. The gas or no gas, what difference does it make? Carrie, a great question, but the gas or no gas is going to go to how close the weapon was to Paul. That's why. And I imagine the defense has an expert that will talk about the weapon needs to be closer than 3 feet, even though there's no stippling to this upper wound, that it needs to be closer for the gas to cause the type of injury caused to Paul. And that will change it. Poot, this is the Brain Bible. You read it. Excellent. I'd offer this Reddit thread as an exhibit into experience. I zoned out. Did he say money? He was basically there. This is a very fair point about the JFK assassination. She better stand her ground. I think she did. Someone make it stop. Yeah. I wanted to make it stop all morning. But instead I ordered donuts on DoorDash. So those will be arriving. Happy Valentine's Day to me. Love is ordering yourself some donuts in the morning. I was going to order some Starbucks, but then I couldn't, because, I live in the country, so it is what it is. It's going to be interesting to see what the jury does. We need live on location, Emily, live reactions. I can't do live reactions from the courtroom. It would be my types of reactions. The way I react to things when I hear them would be very inappropriate in live court. I would have to sit there much more stoic and not give any live reactions. So doing this is way better for me because, again, I think being able to hear the testimony, pause it if needed, which generally don't. We can find points to talk over. It's fine. And go through it with y'all, I find is much more helpful. Me sitting in court, taking the same notes I'm going to take while I'm here talking to y'all doesn't really help. Yes, you might be able to see the jury. I didn't pick this jury. This isn't my jury. It's not my case. I don't know everything that they're going to bring. I don't know what their ultimate end goal is. We're trying to find it based on logic and experience, but we don't know what their ultimate end goal is at all. Whole court case feels so unprofessional. It's weird. No rules. Yep. Oh, thanks, Dr. B. Come on in. Come on in. I definitely want some napkins. Can I see? Thank you, Dr. B. Dr. B brought me Dr. B brought me the donuts. He brought me the goods. Thanks, Dr. B. Do you guys want to see? Court's not back yet. We got some options. Mostly cake donuts. Because that's what we like. I'm going to have to save some of these for the kiddos. We're definitely not going to eat all the donuts, but thank you for asking. I slept in and I'm late. Are they now forming a line for questioning? Sort of. I understand why, but it feels icky for the murders to be made in a battle of gamesmanship. Yeah, criminal trials in general. It does feel icky. The thing is, when you get into it, everyone involved can become a bit desensitized to the way that, bless you, to the, thank you. I did not get the cronuts. No cronuts today, just cake donuts. You're welcome to take, do you want any? All right. He's exploring whether he wants any donuts.
Old fashioned.
These are the old fashioned one. I know Tennessee does it different.
No.
I tried, dude. I know. Try one of those. You'll like it. Clerk asked a great question. Did the phone also walk away? Right. Dr. B was looking for old-fashioned donuts. The old-fashioned donuts, mostly in Middle Tennessee, are not the old-fashioned donuts that we're talking about. The old-fashioned donuts with the little wheel. These are old-fashioned donuts that are cake donuts, not yeast donuts. Anyway, it's a whole thing. Dr. B's like, bring the donuts. So we're looking for old-fashioned donuts. No, they're not Krispy Kremes. We went for not Krispy Kremes. We went for local donuts. One of these days, I told you, depending on where we get with subscribers, maybe we'll break the streak and have a Krispy Kreme. We're at 691. We got a ways to go, y'all. Do the YouTube things. I don't know why this break is so long. It's awkward. Thank you for making this trial bearable to watch. I feel like we have all jumped the shark. We are in like the last 2 seasons of Lost, and we can't turn it off because we need to know if it resolves at the end. We might be left completely unfulfilled with no resolution, but I'm just holding out for a hero. I just hope that we will get that. We have been promised a timeline witness, a witness that is going to tie all of this together, that is going to bring the action, that is going to tell us this cell phone did this, and then this car did this, and tie all of that together. And if that witness is not clear, I will lose my mind. I will lose my mind. Green Beagle. I've never had a Krispy Kreme donut. This came up when we were talking about Krispy Kremes because this trial Krispy Kremes came up because the Murdaughs had gone to a baseball game and then they had stopped by Almeida to go to the parents' house and brought them Krispy Kreme donuts because they're Krispy Kreme donuts. And his dad liked Krispy Kreme donuts. This was before dad went into the hospital. And they like Krispy Kreme donuts. And I made a comment that I have never had a Krispy Kreme donut because I haven't. And there was a local donut shop near where I went to high school and where I grew up that my friends and I all loved. And it was just a local owned donut shop. And that was our place. They catered to the high school kids. It was great. We were on a first name basis with literally everybody. So loved the donut shop. So when Krispy Kreme finally extended to our area of Southern California, I was like, no, I love my donuts. And so then it just got so long that I had never had one that now it's like a thing. So now it's a thing. Self-inflicted is where they're going. I think so too. And it's just, it doesn't make sense. The crime scene doesn't make sense for that. The crime scene doesn't make sense for this at all. So the crime scene just doesn't make sense for any of this. The implication of using suicide makes me more suspicious of Alec. He claims innocence, but has no problem of any of these outlandish theories. It is gross. I feel gross along with you. The defense is doing their job. Sometimes the defense job is gross. But I don't think the evidence points there. And the defense can throw everything up and try to get it to stick like they've been doing this whole trial. The prosecution can't. The prosecution can't go with let's see what sticks. The defense can. But it's hard for the defense to argue both somebody in the trees and harm, self-harm. Like, it just doesn't make sense. Was that Dr. B objecting? Dr. B objected to the types of donuts. Yep, he sure did. He sure did. He sure objected to the types of donuts. He sure did. He sure did. Let's see. How can it be self-inflicted when people were in the trees? Right. And maybe the defense forgets that we've all heard them say that. Question, are they trying to say, no, they're not. They're trying to go the other way around on that. Could his start be to show AM's emotion to the jury? I don't know, maybe. Happy Valentine's Day to those who are single. Look, we're law nerds. We're all together here. We are all together here. So happy Valentine's Day. I love y'all. We even released a mug for Valentine's Day that had been limited edition a number of years back. It is still limited. It is only up through the end of the month. My team has no idea that I did it because last night I was like, I'm going to do this. And we just did it. We just do things. We just do things. We just do it. Emily, if AM did do this, then it's safe to assume he is having a different kind of morning than we all are. That's true. Even if he didn't do this, whether he did or didn't, either way, this is a miserable experience for him. The lawyers, I was starting to say this earlier about lawyers in criminal cases. I've done some pretty horrific criminal cases. My husband was actually mentioning it yesterday when we were talking about this case. He's like, do you remember that particular case? A case that I don't talk about much. I'm like, yes. He's like, I remember some of those photos because you had them when you were working on the case at home and you were like sitting on the couch and I looked over it and he's like, I will never forget those photos. I'm like, yep, nope, yep. When you're working in the case, everything else kind of goes to the wayside and you're focused on the case. So it doesn't, I don't think Dick feels like, oh, this is uneasy and I have to do it. Dick's like, this is my argument and I'm here for it. And maybe I have to look like I'm uneasy because I think maybe the jury would expect that, or maybe I have to apologize about these pictures, but I'm getting into it. This is my case. This is what we're doing. And he has said he is leaning in. He said it from opening. He is leaning into how horrific the damage to Paul's body was. They barely talked about Maggie at all, but they are leaning in to that in this case. And he's ready to lean in and do his case, but doing enough criminal, especially of the really violent crimes, it does desensitize the attorneys too. And it's something they have to be mindful of when they're presenting the case. But you can see it with the ME too. The ME is trying to explain and has gone into like teacher mode. Like, it's really interesting this way and the body would have to be this way. And she's gone into explaining things without maybe the gravity that you would expect, because she's done 5,000 autopsies. This is her putting together the puzzle pieces. For the jury, it's the most horrific thing they've ever seen. And for those in the court, it is describing how their loved one was murdered. But for her, it's, hey, this is how this works. Let me tell you what the body told me. And that's a very interesting thing, but it's different. And it's something that is hard to explain unless you've done that work. And so I know some of you were off, but you're like, she just like defaulted into work mode. Yes, she did. And criminal attorneys do too. Which is something that they have to be aware of, and something I was always aware of. Well, not always aware of. That's not true. I was not always aware. There were times it was just like, this is what we're doing. And I was like, oh, the jury's not going to like seeing these. And then you let them know this is going to be hard. And then you keep doing your case. Can we take a shot every time Dick says, I'm sorry, Cassandra, it's too early for me, but I will try to take a swig of coffee. He does say I'm sorry a lot. So he's just going to ask questions until he gets the answer he wants. He kept trying to push it. You know what it felt like? It felt like when my 11-year-old really wants something. And it's like, hey, right now, cell phone being one of the things. Can I get a cell phone? Well, we kind of want to wait till you're 13. Well, I'm 11. It's close to 13. What would being 13 mean to you that would allow me to have a cell phone then? Like, do I need to tell you that I'm more responsible? Do I need to earn some money so I can pay for a cell phone? Like, I won't be on social media. I'm not going to watch YouTube on my cell phone. We could just do this and this. Trying to move the needle a little bit. That's what bothered me so much about Dick's questioning. It feels like your kid is fighting with you. The feed I'm on does not have court back. which is very strange. One of the feeds does and one of the feeds doesn't. The feed I'm monitoring, look at this. The feed I'm monitoring doesn't have court back. That's so strange. And this feed does.
All right.
All right, second
Where are you
feed
employed, sir?
falling down.
General Motors.
And what are your duties there at General
Great,
Motors?
we didn't miss
I'm a
anything.
senior technical expert.
Thanks, chat.
In advanced driver assist systems.
And can you just give the jury a very short version
Thanks, chat.
of what that
That's
entails?
weird.
Very short, please.
I investigate field performance.
I totally
issues
missed his
and
name.
Concerns with our advanced driver assistance systems.
We
And
have some
as part
fucking
of that,
questions, GM guy.
role, do you help maintain certain records that are kept by GM in a normal course of business?
I don't necessarily maintain those records, but I'm aware of records that we keep on servers relative to
Yo,
vehicle data
GM, we
that
got
can be
questions.
assistance in our field performance investigations.
We got questions. I'm going
When
to try
you say
to
field
pull up some more
performance
super chats. I didn't get
investigations,
to all of
that's
them. We were
something
chatting.
That's correct.
And that reference is generally what? What does that mean? when
I'm
you say
just
field
hearing the other
performance
feed coming
investigations?
back now.
Understanding how
I
our
don't know how
vehicles
it
may
got so
perform
far
in the
behind,
field,
but it
active
clearly
safety
did. I might have
systems
been behind on
include
that
things like
feed.
Forward collision alert and automatic emergency braking. So as we look at how those things perform in the field,
That's odd.
vehicle data and other data we collect can be helpful in understanding what is occurring with those events, understanding how our systems are performing.
Okay. And do modern GM vehicles, under certain conditions,
Lots of
upload
explaining to
information to GM servers?
That's correct. We've got telematics units in our vehicles. That's a fancy name for sending information over the air. Those, as part of a normal course of business, those electronic modules in the vehicle collect lots of pieces of data from different sensors and modules in the vehicle. And that information can be sent via cell phone networks and or Wi-Fi back to servers.
Thanks
at
for the
General
super
Motors.
chat, Larry. Okay.
And General Motors then keeps that information in the course of normal business, correct?
That is correct.
Now, if someone buys a GM vehicle and they're not comfortable with uploading certain types of information, can they opt out of some of the things?
Yeah, certainly privacy, customer privacy is
You
a
can
big
opt
concern
out?
at General Motors, as you would expect. We've got lots of teams that look at that, investigate and understand that. And we've got various protocols in place to protect the customer's privacy.
Okay. And just let's speak generally again. What specific sorts of information is routinely uploaded from GM vehicles to GM servers?
It can be a lot of different pieces of information. Diagnostic trouble codes with your engines or brake systems. It could be information we upload. We monitor the performance of things like your battery to understand if your battery is getting low or needs some charging, and other pieces of information about what the vehicle may be doing. That can and does include, I would say, GPS information, your vehicle location, and potentially speed and things like that.
Okay.
Deborah, we had talked about
and that
that.
sort
We
of
hadn't gotten
information
to the
is kept by
legal
GM in
level
the
of
course of
badgering,
normal
which is
That's correct,
argumentative.
sir.
All right. And I'm going to draw your attention
To why the
March
fuck you
of
didn't
last year.
answer.
Are you aware, at least
Yes.
as of today, that SLED sent a search warrant to GM?
That's correct. I believe a search warrant was sent to General Motors to generally request information we may have about a particular vehicle.
Yep. And
And I know you don't have the search warrant in front of you, but did you make a note of what vehicle identification number or VIN that search warrant was requesting information for?
I do. I have that number here with me. I can read that.
Can you read that, please?
Yeah, VIN is a vehicle identification number that uniquely identifies the vehicle. It's a 17-character number. 1GN SK FK D0 MR 210998.
Okay.
there was cardboard over the
and
screen because of the
Let's
medical examiner
fast forward
photos.
to last Friday, which I believe was February 10th, if I looked at my calendar correctly. Did it come to your attention that even though that search warrant had been served back in March of last year, GM in fact had some information that was responsive to the original search warrant?
Yeah, that's correct. I wasn't necessarily involved in the search warrant back in March, but I did become aware Friday evening that
How?
additional information not previously given before existed.
All right.
How?
And so GM did in fact have some information on servers for that particular event, correct?
How?
That's correct.
That had not been previously provided to law enforcement prior to last Friday, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
All right.
Why?
And- okay.
How?
And I'm going to show you what's
How?
been
Why?
marked as States Exhibit 515, 515.
Thank you.
And I'm going to ask if you recognize that CD, sir.
Yes, that's correct. That's a CD
They're good
with
donuts.
information on it that I reviewed
I have so
on a
many questions
laptop
for this
earlier
guy.
today, and I've signed and dated the CD.
All right. And did you verify that the records contained on that CD is the information GM provided in response to that original March search warrant?
Yes, that's correct. I reviewed the 3 spreadsheets, Excel files that were on here, and those are in fact the same information that was stored in our databases and provide to you. And yes, I can authenticate that.
Okay. So those records contained on the CD are authentic copies of records maintained by GM in the normal course of business?
Yes, sir.
All right. And just briefly, what sorts of information is contained? And we're not going to ask you to go line by line or anything because there's a pretty voluminous amount of data, correct?
Yeah, there's 3 different Excel sheets, information collected over 3 days. Again, as I kind of talked, I have not reviewed the details of this. I'm not asked to analyze it.
Sure.
The form and content
Just
is what we get
providing
there.
the
But
foundation.
generally speaking, that information includes, it says vehicle diagnostic information, information on the battery systems, and GPS information.
Okay. GPS information, including speed information?
That's correct. Longitude, latitude, speed information are included in there.
At this time, state would move to enter exhibit 515.
Sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Heard from the state.
By the defense.
Yeah.
Thank
Somebody
you.
ask him fucking why. Get him, Barbara. I got questions.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Don't let us down, man.
Have maybe 1 minute worth of questions.
Seriously, sir, what the fuck?
So you were not part of the, you weren't working on this when the search warrant came in, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you just became aware of this on Friday?
That's correct.
How did you become aware of it?
GM General Motors legal staff reached out to me in response to the subpoena as a person who could come down and authenticate these records.
The legal staff told you that you had information responsive to the search warrant?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the General Motors had information responsive, not me personally.
I apologize for that, of course, General Motors.
That's fair.
Are you aware of the testimony that occurred earlier in this case regarding reverse engineering the electronics in the Chevy Suburban?
I have general knowledge that some FBI folks have looked at some infotainment
Some FBI folks.
information.
Because you didn't respond to the search
infotainment
warrant.
system in the vehicle.
But do you have any knowledge of any reverse engineering efforts the FBI conducted over the course of a full year?
I
A
have not
year.
been involved in those or
Took them a
not aware
year.
of any details of that, no, sir.
Took them a year.
Maybe you can answer one quick technical question.
Seriously,
The
WTF.
timestamps in this data, where do they come from?
I have not reviewed this specific data, but the timestamps on
haven't
these
even
things
looked at it?
here, when GPS information is collected by a GPS receiver, included in that is timestamp information.
And then finally, this is information that was uploaded to a server at GM.
That's correct.
No further questions.
Anything further?
Nothing stated.
You may step down.
Great.
We call your next witness.
Roger Dale Davis.
All right, Roger. I appreciate someone who insists on their middle name. Let's get Roger Dale Davis and see what he has to say.
Raise your right hand and left hand on, please. Do you swear or affirm that any testimony you give David the truth?
I thought
whole truth, and
crullers
nothing
were the
but truth,
long
so help you God?
ones
Yes.
with the
You
ribboning.
would please, sir, be
I'm
seated.
confused.
State your full name for the record. Spell your last name and adjust the microphone before they can hear you.
We're gonna have to find it on a place that has the one Dr. B wants. Any info on Paul and Buster's trust? No. I have no idea about that. And I have no idea who this witness is.
Name is Roger Dale Davis Jr.
Roger Dale Davis Jr.
Last name is Davis.
And Mr. Davis, do you go by Dale?
Dale, Roger, either way.
Okay. Or
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Just don't call me Dick.
It don't matter.
If you could do me a favor, because it's a little hard to hear some folks in this courtroom, if you make sure that microphone's pulled close to you and speak into it, we all greatly appreciate it. All right, Dale, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where were you born? Where were you raised?
I was born in Hampton County. I was raised in Hampton.
He probably went to
Went to
Wade
Wade
Hampton
Hampton
High
High
School. What was the point of the GM guy?
Again, if you would,
Records
please try to get
Foundation.
A little closer to that microphone. I
That
know
was
it's tight
Records
in there.
Foundation. It's the worst seat in the world, sir. We feel for you.
All right,
Records
what line of
Foundation,
work
so
do
they
you,
can
have you
analyze
done?
it.
Construction work all my life.
Did you ever have an opportunity to work at the farm in Moselle?
Yes,
Is that close to where you actually live?
mile and a half.
How did you become
I like
familiar
him.
with the Murdaugh family and the Moselle
I
property?
like
How'd
that
you
just
start working
he's
there?
answering
I
just
was walking and
exactly.
Alex would
What
stop
he's
and
asked.
talk with me, and he asked me one day about cleaning the kennels for him, and probably a couple months, 6 months later, then he asked me to come do it on the weekends,
And that started about 4 years ago?
about 4 years ago.
And walk us through the process. What'd you do? How many times a day did you do it?
Twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening.
What time in the morning?
So took care of the
Generally?
dogs.
Average around 7.
You wake up early?
Oh, yeah.
So 7 a.m. and then what time in the evenings generally?
Usually around, I try to get there around 3:30, 4 o'clock,
How long does the process typically take you?
about 45 minutes.
And walk us through what that process is. What do you do out there?
In the morning times, I would
I
take,
think he's
go
smiling.
feed all the dogs, give them time to eat. I'd feed the chickens. That way the dogs would have time to eat. Then I'd wash the pens out. Then I would usually roll the hose up and then go to the house. And then come back in the afternoon and repeat the process.
Now you mentioned washing the pens out. Now the dogs, did they have dog beds in their
Yes.
kennels?
Yeah, Buster. Excuse me. Grady and Bubba had 2 dog beds.
And if you're
Why didn't Bubba have a dog bed? We've
Are you
got
spraying it with
questions.
Water?
Sprayed it with water.
What did you do with the dog beds?
I would stick them up on top of the dog box.
This goes to the crime scene that they weren't cleaning out the kennels
then,
because the beds were on the floor.
Did you leave them up there or did you put them back?
Normally typically, once I wash the pens out, I would lay them back down, especially if it was cold in the wintertime, I would lay them back down on the ground. But during the summertime, you would wait to that afternoon to lay them back down on the ground.
In the 4 years you worked there, did you get to know the property fairly well?
Yes,
Did you get to know the folks that lived there pretty well?
yes,
Did you get to know Maggie Murdaugh at all?
yes, sir.
All right, well, tell us what your experiences with her were.
Normally, she was just so laid back. She would talk to you like a normal person. We'd sit there and talk about the dogs. She'd talk about sometimes where she would be at the beach. She normally would tell me, I'm going to the beach. I'm taking Bubba and Grady with me or whatnot, or I'm
Because
going to
of
leave them.
course.
Or if it was real hot, she would want me to put them over there in the ice house, turn the air conditioner on where they have the ice, the coolers at,
Did Maggie like to spend time with the dogs?
all the time.
And you mentioned the ice house. Was that the processing house kind of on the back of the hangar?
Property, that was the.
There's an ice house.
And why was it air conditioned? Is that why you said she?
Counsel, are you not
Yeah,
listening to
during
his
summertime,
answers?
It got real hot.
What are you doing?
In that house, does it have air conditioning? That shed?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's frozen. That was frozen.
All right.
Look
Did
at
you
the
get to
way-
know,
what are you doing?
Paul at all?
Yes.
All right. What was your experiences with him?
He was a little wild and crazy, but he would work. That boy would work.
He liked being at the farm.
He liked getting out and doing things, hunting, but he would work on the tractor or whatever, and Daddy needed him to do.
And did you get to know Alex?
I did.
Is he here today?
Yes, sir.
Where is he?
He's sitting right over there.
Do you explain what he's wearing?
Wearing a suit, pair of glasses.
We're going to have a
blue-looking
donut
shirt.
discussion at the next break.
And what were your experiences with Alex?
He was always very particular. He would want the dog buckets washed out. If they looked like they started getting any kind of green or brown looking
I'll talk to that at
stuff in the water,
break.
he wanted to make sure, which I usually wash them out every 2 weeks anyway, with bleach. But I always dump them every day.
Was Alex easy to get a hold of?
No.
All right, explain that. What do you mean by that?
He would either be in court or doing something with business. It would sometimes be a little bit difficult to get a hold of him.
Who did you see most often when you were out there?
Miss Maggie or either Paul.
And how did Maggie and Paul typically come to and from the big house to the kennel area?
Paul would usually be in his truck.
We've heard a lot about trucks. Which truck was that?
Dolly?
His white F-150.
What was the name of that truck?
Unless his daddy had him doing something, then he would have to drive the F-250. But most of the time he'd be in his white F-150.
And what color was the F-250?
Sydney, I
It was
didn't know
also
that.
white.
So 2 white trucks were what he typically used.
Yes, sir.
And how about Maggie?
She normally drove her Range Rover until she got the black Mercedes.
This is not the groundskeeper.
And then
This
what would she drive after
Is
Most
the
of the time
gentleman
she
who
would drive
took
the
care
black
of the
Mercedes.
dogs.
that? And
So not CB
would she
Rowe.
load her dogs, the house?
This is
First
Roger
of all,
Dale Davis.
Which dogs were down there? Do you remember all the dogs?
Bubba, Grady, Maggie. Then they started letting
Cash.
his name right on. Dahlia was there, Armadillo, and I call her Tappy Toes. I don't know what they called her, but that's what I always called her.
And I think the other dog, was that a dog owned
Tappy
by one
Toes.
of Paul's friends, Rogan? Is that the one you're referring to?
Yes,
What type of dog was it?
a lab, chocolate lab.
And which dogs were the family dogs, the family pets?
Grady, Bubba, and Maggie,
And what kind of dogs were they?
labs.
And colors?
Bubba was yellow, Grady was black, and Maggie was yellow.
And would they where would they typically stay, those dogs, those animals?
It all depended on, most of the time, because Bubba was very rambunctious. So they would got where they would lock him up in the kennels at
Bubba
night.
slander.
And most of the time they would lock all the labs up in the.
Would you call
kennels to
him
keep 'em from
hard-headed,
moving off.
sir? Because poor Bubba.
But Miss Maggie would take him out when she was home. Usually a lot of times after I done left, she would take him up to the house and let him roam around the yard for a couple hours, and then she would bring him back down to the pens.
And would Maggie load them into her car if she was taking them elsewhere to the beach or wherever else she was staying?
Wherever she was staying at, she would load them in the vehicle. Most times she would load them right in her vehicle.
So Bubba and Grady got treated more like pets, not just working dogs. They were just,
I'm
dogs.
going to hand you what's been
I
marked
think this is,
state's
again, this is
exhibits.
going to whether or not the pens were being hosed down. And we know the pens weren't being hosed down because the dog
I'm
beds
going to hand
weren't
you
up.
what's been marked as state's
So
exhibits.
this is going to the
505,
water.
506,
And then they're going to get
502,
to,
503,
I think,
504,
how hard it was to catch Bubba and get him back in his pen.
516. Dale, if you wouldn't mind, please take a moment
We'll
to
get there.
review all these and let me know if you recognize what they show.
I like this witness.
They showed a kennel.
It's
Okay,
just,
and then
I love the no nonsense,
I
just
believe there's
answering
one
the questions
diagram there,
asked.
if you recognize
Just-
what that
This is what it is.
shows.
It shows diagram drawing of the kennel.
They ask a lot about Bubba.
Your Honor,
But-
we move to place all those exhibits into evidence, I believe, without objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
They're admitted without objection.
They weren't hosing down the kennels because the beds weren't still up and the beds would have to be up until it dried. So
Dale, I'm going to show you what's been marked
I don't know.
as State's Exhibit 505.
I'll have
We
to
have
take
the,
a look
comment, please.
later. Part of my 30 acts of kindness for my 30th birthday. Love you, Emily. Alexandria, thank you and happy birthday. I appreciate it. The gasp I just let out at Poot's okay to the judge. The cojones. Yup.
Dale, while we get this loaded up, tell me a little bit. I know, did you have a particular way of hosing down and, with the dealing with the hose? Tell us a little bit about what that was.
I'll come back to that when we have a break.
The particular way of me putting the hose away, or
Right.
normally after I got through washing, I would stretch the hose straight out
Into which direction?
back towards the shed room right there, the dog feed room.
All right, and we now have the Elmo up. We're looking at Exhibit 505, and the feed room, I believe, is what you're referring to. Is that the structure on the
Jen,
far
we're
right?
here for the distraction for you and sending
All right,
you
and
lots
then-
of love.
Where is in this picture? Where is the hose you're talking?
Why
about
is the
located?
prosecution not
Just
objecting?
back
No idea.
towards the left-hand
Exhibit.
side, back towards the forest end.
These are the pens.
Is that yellow?
That's that
fish
yellow
wrapped up?
green looking hose.
I'm
All right,
unreasonably
go ahead and
excited by
explain
these
to us what
exhibits
you
right now.
Typically do after rinsing off and putting the hose away.
I would stretch the hose out back towards the feed room. I would cut the valve off at the top, which is right up above as the hose come in. Then I would walk back down and cut the valve on at the end of the hose. That way it would release the pressure, and then I would roll it up slowly
So this
until I had
is
it
how
uniform.
Were you pretty
he
particular about
took
how you
care of the
wound that
kennels.
hose?
Yes,
And why would you do it that way? And did you do it that way every time?
every time.
And why would you do it so particularly?
Because if you notice how the hose right now is kinked up, it would start making the hose when if you didn't do it right. Eventually, would it keep kinking? It would start making it where it didn't want to, and it would cause the hose to start having little splits in it.
because it would fuck up the hose.
The
Yes,
picture
the
that
hose
you're
is
seeing
not
there, that
how
hose,
he
is that
left it.
The way you would wind it up?
Nope.
He's like, this is a mess and I hate it.
I'm very particular how I roll that hose up, and it's kinked up. If you notice, there's pressure on that hose.
There's pressure on the hose.
Somebody used that hose after I did.
Yep.
Because it is twisted, and the nozzle is too far up. The nozzle, I would always have it made sure it was laid down flat. That nozzle is too far up.
Somebody used the hose after I did.
Dale, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 516.
I'm going to leave this here so we can see the exhibits bigger.
And again, please briefly explain what it is we're looking at there.
The
Yes.
drawing of the kennel.
Okay. I'm going to hand you a pen, and with the court's permission, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and fill in well, first of all, let's back up.
I
you
love
work
how much
The
attention to
were you
detail he
aware of
paid in the work
events
that he did.
surrounding June 7th, 2021, where Maggie and Paul were murdered?
I
Yes.
received a phone call from CD that the sled wanted to see me because Miss Maggie and Paul had been murdered. And I thought he was joking, but he told me no. I told him, give me 5 minutes. I'll be up there because I was going to carry my trash off at the time. And I got up there and the dogs was raising Cain, and I asked them, could I go ahead and feed the dogs so they would quiet down? And they told me to give them a few minutes, and then they gave me permission to feed them. As soon as I fed them, they just quiet down. They bark no more.
This is a
So
great
you were
witness.
familiar about that incident?
Yes, sir.
And you went out there what day?
That morning.
This
Is that the 8th, the morning of Tuesday?
contradicts the
When the murders happened, yes.
way
Did you work every day leading up to that day?
Yes.
this
And
contradicts
did you do
the
that normal
argument
routine
about
which you
cleaning
already
the kennels.
described?
Yes.
All right. And did you in fact do that normal routine on the Monday before the murders?
Yes.
Walk us through that day. What did you do in the morning?
I got there probably around 7:27, 8 o'clock. It all depended on when I got up. Most time I got up early, I would be there before 6:30, 7 o'clock. I would go through there, feed the dogs, then go feed the chicken. That give the dog time to eat their food, and then I'd wash the pens out.
It's an order.
And was anything unusual or out of place when you were down there in the morning?
No,
And did you repeat the process?
Were there
again
any
in
guns
the
down there?
afternoon, in the
Ask him if he
evening
saw
time?
any guns
I
down
did.
there.
What time did you, on Monday, June
Ask
7th,
him.
what time did you go back to the pens?
I got there before 4 o'clock. But I remember leaving at 4:30.
All right. And was anyone there at the time you went to the dog kennels that day?
No,
Did you notice anything out of place when you went there to dog kennels in the evening time?
no.
And what did you do after arriving?
Well, once I arrived that afternoon, I got out. I fed Grady, Bubba, and Maggie. Because we fed them twice a day. The hunting dogs only got once a day. Took and fed them. I picked the dog beds up. I dumped all the water out because I washed all their bucket, gave them fresh water, washed the pens out.
This goes against what
Stretched
the
the
defense
hose
is
out,
arguing.
cut the water at the valve off at the top, went down there, cut the water on, the valve on down at the end of the hose so the water wouldn't come out, rolled the hose up, and at 4:30 I left.
And you rolled it. Did you roll the hose up the way you've always done it that day?
Every time.
I think they're going to argue that Alec
Remember how
hosed
the dogs
himself
were
off
laid out
with the
in
hose at the kennels
that day when
because
you
the hose is
left.
put back wrong.
When I left, yes, sir.
It's the detail people don't know. Alec wouldn't know.
And with the court's permission, I'm going to ask the witness to please, if you would, write on that piece of paper, the exhibit, state's exhibit
I don't think Alec would know
516.
how much
Beginning
care and
with,
attention Dale
first
had
of all,
given
on
to the
far right, what's
hose
that door
so that the
signifying?
hose didn't get
Storage
Got
room, feed room.
damaged and gross.
beginning with kennel 1 next to the feed room.
He stretched it out so the water would
What
drain
dog
and
was in
then
there when you
wrapped it
left
specifically
that day
so
at
it wouldn't
4
damage.
o'clock or
Alec wouldn't
before
know
5
that.
o'clock?
Grady.
All right. If you would, please write Grady in there.
So it's very good details and something that whether it's Alec or someone else that they wouldn't have known. But you hear the hose running in the Snapchat,
Okay. And then moving on to kennel 2. What
but
dog
the
was in
kennels
kennel
were
2?
hosed down
Bubba.
already. So the defense suggested an opening. No, the defense suggested
For
with
reference,
questioning
Grady was the black lab.
law enforcement.
Grady is the black lab,
Oh, I wonder if the
Bubba's
dogs
a
are in a
what?
different
yellow
order.
lab.
Okay. And who was next to Bubba in pen 3?
Maggie, because she was getting bigger than Bubba.
And Maggie is a what color?
A yellow lab.
I wonder if the dogs are back in the wrong order. So
Were there any dogs next to Maggie?
No.
Okay. And that would be kennel 4 was open?
That'd be, that one should be an open.
But
The
where
next
was
one down
Cash?
should have been Rodent's dog.
Okay. Can
Rogan's
you write
dog.
that in
There
there?
it
Just
is.
write chocolate lab.
his name is Cash.
Rogan's dog, whatever you want to write.
His name is Cash.
That would be kennel 5.
Trying to remember Rogan's dog's name.
Cash. Excuse me. It's Cash.
Should've
We
been in
know.
there.
We know. Can we phone a friend? Pupper is named Cash. Okay. So I wonder if the dogs are put back in the wrong way.
I don't remember what Rogan's dog's name was at the time.
Was there any dog located in kennel 6?
Is Cash the one they were calling Tappy
If you want
Toes?
to work, however you want to do it, sir. It's if you want to just fill out the rest of the dogs, the working dogs, that's fine.
Well, Dahlia was at the very end, kennel 10. I know that.
So with all of this, I wonder if the dogs are put back in the wrong spot.
Oh.
Because again, Alec
Then
didn't
let's
do
see.
stuff with the dogs.
Armadillo
Maggie
should have
messed
been
with
the
the
next
dogs.
one coming back from Ken. Let's see, empty on 9.
And so
It should have
Maggie
been-
messing with the
Hold on.
dogs is not something
Yeah.
Alec thought was important.
Armadillo should have been
So
right
the
past the hose right
details,
there.
the details are interesting.
And then
So I want to see if the dogs are in the right spot or not.
It would have to be Tappy Too's right there because they always kept Roden's dog and Maggie. There was a kennel in between them.
My husband didn't used to be particular about the
So
hose.
that should have been
And then we
Tappy
moved to
Too's right
Tennessee
there.
and we learned real quick. Southern California, you don't have to be as particular about a hose. In the South, you need to be more particular about a hose.
I'm going to put this on the screen, just verify that that was what you
Oh, exhibit
filled
E's.
out.
Emily said, to be fair, I would notice if someone
All
put
right,
something
Mr.
back differently in my kitchen.
Dale, I see.
A lot of
starting with
people would.
Number 1, Grady, then Bubba, Maggie, then 5 is Rogan, 6 is Tappy Toes, 7 is Armadillo, and 10 is Dahlia. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's the way it was when you left the property at around 5 o'clock that Monday, June 7th.
Yes.
The thing is,
And
Alec
on-
wasn't
for-
paying
for our
attention
reference,
to what was
on
being
this
taken care of
diagram,
at his
that
home
green
for him.
circle, that represents what?
The hose.
The
Garden
thing,
hose.
the thing
I'm gonna
is,
show you a few more
Alec wasn't doing
pictures.
these things in his
If you
home
would just
repeatedly.
describe what we're seeing.
Oh, something's. What's everybody
At
looking
that
at?
angle?
Why is everyone looking at the
Yes.
door?
All right, where are we looking at at this angle? Where are we looking at things?
Exhibits are
You're
so
looking straight
helpful.
down
The full screen
kennel.
is so helpful.
where you got the hose and
Long
the
crime, this looks great.
walkway going down in front of the kennels.
And on this picture, where would the feed room be located?
At the very end, on the right hand of this picture.
When you, in the 4 years you were washing out the kennels,
very
did
helpful
water collect or pool in certain
orientation.
areas?
It did,
All right. Can you identify in this picture those areas?
right under the hose, and right there, which should have been Armadillo's pen. That should have, right there, and then right below it should have been collective. And maybe one more little spot right down there towards the end of the post right there, but that'd be about it.
For the record, let me say for the record, this is stage 504. Moving on to stage 502, a very similar angle.
He did. He said,
Dale, do you
should
see
have
those
been.
pools of collected water that you mentioned just
He said,
on the last exhibit?
should have been.
Yes,
I want to know if the dogs are in the right
And
spot or not.
also states 506. And again, do you see the same angle, just pulled a little farther back?
yes.
Who's the dog there on the last pen that we can see in the dog shed, in the dog house?
Dahlia.
If he's saying if he was hosing down the kennels, he would put the dog beds up on the
All right. Did water ever pool over by the
little
feed
dog
room?
houses.
No, because usually that's the reason I would go in the afternoons, the sun would come down and beat. It would dry it up a lot quick. Especially in the summertime, it would really dry it real quick.
That makes
In the
sense.
wintertime, the sun would actually still hit the concrete.
He knows this
around
property well.
3 to 4 o'clock. It'd be usually around 6 or so before the sun wouldn't be hitting on the concrete.
Did water pool in the front of
So it
where
would
Bubba would have been
dry.
located or Grady?
No.
Showing you states exhibit 503.
For everyone in the chat, I agree. Y'all are like,
Dale, are
I
you
love
able to
how
see the
detailed he
water
is.
located
He
in
knew
the
what he
feed
did
room
every
in front of
day.
the two kennels, 1 and 2?
And he clearly liked what he did every day.
Yes.
Is that how water would normally pool when you washed the kennels for 4 years?
Oh,
Normally, no. There's too much water right there. You can tell when the concrete's already done started drying, but there's too much water right there around.
someone
second
wasn't
and
cleaning the
third
kennels.
Looking at this picture,
The
what
puppies
dog
make me
do we
sad.
see in kennel 1 and what dog do we see there in kennel 2?
You see Bubba in kennel 1 and Maggie in kennel 2.
And again, Grady is what kind of dog?
Grady is a lab,
What color is he?
black.
Black.
Dogs are in the
Is
wrong
that
spots.
And when we say the spots where you would put them or they were located, Were there assigned kennels necessarily to the dogs?
Not really, but most of the time Miss Maggie wanted Grady to be in that kennel right next to the feed room. And then we'd usually put Bubba or Maggie in the parlor.
So that
Somebody
was
done put the dogs
habit,
back in
mostly
wrong.
Maggie's habit?
Yes, sir.
Did anyone else in the family put the dogs in a specific location, or did they put it wherever they could find a spot?
They would put it wherever they could find a spot.
But Maggie was particular about where she put them up?
Most of the time, yes.
Maggie didn't put the dogs away.
Dale, I'm going to ask you about firearms in general. Are you familiar generally with firearms?
Yes.
Did Paul have any firearms that he favored over more often than others, just in your experience with him?
Yes.
All right. Are you familiar with an assault rifle style rifle?
Yes.
All right. Tell us about the one that you observed Paul having with him most often.
When he went hog hunting, he would have a AR style.
JJ, that's
300
correct. Maggie
blackout.
did not put these dogs back away. Someone else put the dogs
What
away.
color was it?
Black.
Did it have a scope on it?
Yes.
All right. Did Paul also favor a camo shotgun?
It's waiting.
Yes. Doing turkey season.
The family owned, as far
This
as you
is
knew, the family owned a lot
very
of firearms. Is that
good.
correct?
Yes.
Info.
Did you, in your experience, and did you spend a lot of time primarily down here at this dog pen area?
Yes.
Twice a day, every day?
Yes.
Did they occasionally leave guns at this area?
Yes.
All right, where would you have found them? And when I say occasionally, what does that mean to you?
That would be, especially when it was during hunting season, they would leave either on the golf cart or side by side. Sometimes they would leave them in the truck, but most of the time it'd be on the golf cart or side by side.
And how often was that? If you're there every day?
Sometimes it could be
Answer that later.
once, sometimes it could be 3 or 4 times
I'll
In
answer that.
a month or?
in a month. It just all depends on how hurt he got.
But that's during hunting season, right?
That's during the hunting
But yeah,
season.
Alec didn't do the things at his house.
And did Alex carry a firearm?
I've never seen him carry a firearm, but I know he carried a pistol in his vehicle.
Did you have a chance to listen to a kennel video?
A lot of
in meeting
people
with
worked at
law
Moselle.
enforcement?
I did.
And did you identify the voices on that kennel video?
I did.
Whose voices did you hear?
Paul, Maggie's, and Alex.
In all the time that you spent out there in the 4 years, every day, twice a day, did you ever see a gun left in the feed room?
No.
Maggie might have been filling up their
You were
water
in the feed
bowls.
room every day, twice a day for 4 years?
Yes.
Thank you, court's indulgence.
This is a very good witness. I just wish we had some of this testimony earlier
Refer to Alex carrying a pistol in his car. Is that because how'd you know that?
because it gave us so much
One
information.
time I had to drive his vehicle over to the law firm. And then every once in a while, you would happen to roll up the window or something up, it go to rain or something up. They happen to not be home.
You mentioned the vehicles.
I like this witness a lot.
Were the
He's
vehicles
just
unlocked?
answering
Vehicles
what
on the
is
farm?
being asked.
All
He's
the
not
vehicles on the
offering
farm,
more.
keys in them.
He's just
Keys in them, so
saw what he saw.
someone could just open the door and drive them?
Oh, yeah. If they wasn't in the switch, they would be in the center console.
And in this picture here, that's still on, do you see the dog beds located in those pictures?
Joanna, if Alec
yes,
carried
they
a
on top
pistol in
of
his
the
vehicle,
dog
why
kennel.
did he need to go get a
Put
gun?
down.
Hadn't been put down.
Because that shotgun had more GSR on it.
Thank you.
By the defense.
A lot of people kept Moselle running for this family. Question, could Paul have put the dogs whenever prior to being shot? It's possible. It's possible. But it's
Good afternoon, Dale.
it's unlikely
I'm
if
Jim
Maggie was there
Griffin.
that she
We've met a
would
few times, haven't we?
Yes, sir.
put them in the right spot.
I want to start by asking you just, how long did you work at Moselle for Alec Murdaugh?
About 4 years.
And twice a day, every day?
No, it started off on just the weekends. And then I went full-time with him right before Ronnie quit.
Okay, and that's Ronnie Freeman?
Whatever his last name is, I know Ronnie. That's all I can tell you.
Yes, and
I appreciate that Jim went to
couple
the
things.
yes, sir.
You've said you've never seen guns left in the feed room, but you certainly seen guns left down in the work shed and
Yes,
in the what you call side by side, and that's a off-road vehicle that two people can sit beside each other.
yes,
And then I guess they had golf cart down
yes,
there, and you seen left guns there.
yes,
And you have seen guns left in their vehicles,
yes.
unlocked, right?
Unlocked.
And hog hunting, there's really no season for hog hunting, is there?
No,
And a couple of those dogs in that kennel were used for hog hunting.
we had got, Paul had got rid of the blue tick. But he kept Armadillo. But he never really hunted him anymore after that last time he got hurt.
Right. Now let's just be,
They're
when you're
having-
hog
they're
hunting with
having their own
dogs, I
little
don't think you can use a gun. can
about
you?
a blue tick, which I
Oh,
think
yeah,
is a
you
type of
use a
dog,
gun.
Oh, you think, okay.
and
The,
armadillo getting
Unless you're
hurt.
man enough to go in there and catch him by the foot and bring him out.
well, somewhere along the way, I heard you had to use a knife as opposed to a gun, but I don't. The, let me ask you I'm going to pull up this video, exhibit 297. It's the kennel video. And hang on, let me get around here. Dale, it should be on the screen
I
there.
believe blue tick.
And
Yeah,
this,
it's a type
I'm
of
going to tell
hunting
you when
dog,
to
right?
stop, Doug, but if you go ahead and play it. Now, wait, stop right there.
I love this guy
Is
too.
that Rogan's dog?
Yes.
Dog named Cash, you think?
Yep, that was it.
Cash. And Cash was,
They were talking about the hogs and whether you'd be man enough to go in and grab a hog by the
but
foot.
what you
and pull
got
him back
labeled
out.
on
That was pretty
exhibit 516, Cash would be in kennel number 5. Is that right?
Should have been around.
And that's a few kennels up from the hose. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We're gonna run this, continue, and I get ready to stop when I tell you, Doug.
I think Doug is getting more southern as this cross-examination proceeds. The accent has gotten thicker. I don't know why the sound's off. Where's the sound? I just don't hear any sound.
All right, stop. Oh, go back. A few seconds.
I can't keep
Well,
track
right
of
there.
how many mascots the Vols
What do you see up
have
there in the top left?
between Davy
on that
Crockett
picture?
and the
Dale?
dog. And I just,
Hose?
I'm trying.
That's the hose?
Yep.
Now that hose is on the ground, isn't it?
That's a good question.
Yes.
Not rolled up, is it?
Nope.
Top of the video.
Okay. And there's water around there, isn't there?
Yes.
Okay. So someone, before this video was taken, had taken the hose down that you meticulously
That's a good
wrapped
cross-examination.
it up. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. You can take that down.
It's a good
Now, you said
question.
Mr. Alec was particular about how the hose should be wrapped. Is that right?
Well, not particularly him. He'd like it to be wrapped up, but he wasn't very particular how, as long as it was wrapped up out of his way.
Okay.
He
But I
wasn't
was very
particular.
particular how I wrapped it.
You were very particular.
Good
Yeah.
answer, Dale.
How about Paul? Was he meticulous how he wrapped it?
No.
Okay. All right. The,
It's a really
Now,
good cross-examination because it's getting back to
You-
those
you
two
mentioned that,
options. Well, Paul
um,
could have done it. He's not.
water would
particular.
not normally accumulate up
Paul,
by Grady
Maggie.
and
Bubba.
Bubba's, because that's where the sun would
Usually
come in the
beats
evening.
You
Right.
washed it, because if you didn't be very particular,
Right.
they didn't seal up underneath that door. So the inside, the jams started to rot. So I tried to make sure, because if it was any kind of puddling or whatever, you'd have to make sure it was gone.
Right.
So you would try not to make sure there was no puddling there. So puddling didn't usually happen around the dog feed room. It would usually a couple posts back. It would have under the hose, usually around about where Armadillo's pen was, and there was a few other little spots around the post that normally wouldn't puddle.
Neil
Now,
just said if it was
and
random,
you were
why did they wrap the hose back
Meticulous
up?
about not letting water build up around the feed room door because of the rot.
Yeah.
And in fact, there was sealant in the feed room where you would have to routinely put by the door to keep it from rotting.
Alex done it the last time.
But you had to periodically do that, right?
Yes.
And you do that because water builds up, right?
Well, because the water was splashed, they didn't seal up underneath the door jamb right now. And it would just run up underneath the plate right there where
It
the
would
cement.
splash.
It would run and drain off.
Now, can we agree that Paul was not as meticulous as you were about spraying around the kennels?
Nope.
We can or cannot agree?
We can agree to that.
All right. And
Jim,
so,
if you ask a bad question, you get a
and
bad answer.
we saw the hose out, and you don't know what time that was, but I think the record reflects it's sometime 8:44 in the evening. I mean, that's about sundown, right, in June?
Oh, yeah.
And so there wouldn't be a hot sun burning the water off if the hose had been used, right around that period of time, would there?
No.
And if Paul had not been meticulous like you, it wouldn't be unusual to see water build up where you see it in the photo, right? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And sometimes the dogs would knock over the water bowl,
They would.
and I think maybe we can see in the photos that would cause water to run off too as well, right?
Oh, yeah, it would run off.
Okay.
Alternate explanations. That's the point of this cross-examination. And it's a good
Now, Dale,
cross-examination. It's pretty easy to follow.
What's lovey-dovey mean to you?
What did it mean to me?
When you use the phrase
relevance.
lovey-dovey about Alec and Maggie,
Oh, that's right.
what
You
does that
did
mean?
say it.
It means they loved each other.
What in your presence, you described them as being lovey-dovey, didn't you?
Yes.
And tell the jury what you meant by that.
Oh, every time I always see them, I've never seen that man even raise his voice at his wife or kids. Or his wife. I've never seen him even, none of them argue. But he always, anything she wanted or the boys wanted, he would try to get it.
And
Maybe how we ended up in this position in
what
the
was
first
your
place.
observation about the relationship with Paul?
They like to hunt and fish together. I mean, they drink beer together.
Okay.
He's the only one that's mentioned the
relationship with
obvious.
Buster.
I didn't see Buster as much, but it was always friendly. I mean, just never seen any harmful way or anything with them.
You remember, Dale, one time, one of the hunting dogs got hung up in one of the kennels,
Yes.
choking to death.
Yes,
And that dog was badly injured, wasn't
it was. It didn't
And-
survive.
he? And the decision
What
was made
happened?
mercy to put the dog down, wasn't it?
Yes.
And Mr. Allen couldn't shoot that dog. He asked you to do it, didn't he?
Oh,
Yes.
And did you do that?
Yes.
interesting line of questioning.
Now, on June 7th, the night of June the 7th, you got off work, I think you said 4:30.
4:30.
And you remember what you did? Did you go home?
I went straight to the house.
And you stay at the house all night?
I sure did.
You stay inside?
I did.
And you live
A mile and a half.
a mile and a half? I've driven a lawnmower down that road, I believe, when I was last time saw you.
I did.
Did
This
you hear any
whole, we know
gunshots
each other so
that
well
night
is
while you were in your house?
interesting.
No, I did not.
This whole, we know each other really well is a very odd thing. The defense is trying to prove, and I'm sorry for all of you who've seen Old Yeller and are triggered. The defense is trying to prove that Alec couldn't do it when the dog.
You mentioned
was
Paul
so
liked to
hurt that
hunt
he
with a
wasn't gonna
blackout,
survive.
300 blackout, I guess.
He did hog hunt.
Yeah, before the murders, when's the last time you saw that gun? You remember?
I cannot remember exact, but it was quite a few months that he had said something about going hog hunting. He had it in his truck.
Right. Okay.
We're in this as
But it's been- it was a
cross-examination.
couple months. I know at least.
It sounds
at least
a lot.
5-6 months.
That's,
All right.
they
What,
keep talking. I'll get to it.
two last points. Bubba's been getting a bad name, but Bubba's a little stubborn dog.
Bubba has been getting a bad name.
Stubborn,
Thank you,
no, he just
Jim.
rambunctious.
Rambo. But if
He's just misunderstood,
he
Jim.
listen to you,
Somewhat,
you listen to Alec,
he would.
and in that feed room, did you keep shot collars back there for the hunting dogs and stuff?
We did.
What else was kept in that feed room besides feed?
Shock collars, feed, chicken feed, the GPS tracking collars.
Was there some medicine?
There
If
was
you need-
medicine, there was all kinds of stuff in it.
So that you need to put something on a dog's skin for rash or something, that had that in the feed room?
Had that.
And now Ms. Maggie would go down there. I mean, you said she'd take a Mercedes sometime, but she'd ride her bike down there too, wouldn't she?
Bicycle, golf cart. And then sometimes she would walk.
She'd walk. And she liked to get the dogs out. Grady and Bubba and Maggie, I think, was Mr. Randolph's dog, wasn't he?
Yes, sir.
And she liked to run the dogs in the golf cart sometimes, let them run
She
behind.
would.
Just
Sometimes she just would get out there and walk. But
now those were pet dogs, but they stayed at the kennel, right?
most of the time they did.
And they didn't let those dogs in the house because Buster had eczema. Were you aware of that?
I didn't wear that. I knew they would take them up to the house. Now, whether they went in, I didn't know.
You didn't know whether
What?
they went in or out or did not.
What does Buster
noticed
having
stayed
eczema
outside
have to do with
around
it?
the
I'm
house.
not following.
And you know they had an electric fence
They did.
and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't?
Yes.
Okay. But it wasn't unusual for Bubba Grady and Maggie to be down at the kennels at
No.
night, right?
It wouldn't.
Okay. And they like to chase chickens? Bubba the one?
They never would chase chickens until Alex had got a rooster that would roost right over there. After he let that rooster out, that joker got there with taunting them jokers. And
The
they got
rooster
where
was
they
taunting
would-
the dogs?
got where they would chase the chickens.
Because the
That
rooster would be taunting the dogs.
Yeah, they aggravate the dogs to death.
All right.
The rooster would fuck with the dogs, and the dogs started chasing the chickens. So they never dealt with the dogs. Never chased the chickens until the rooster started fucking with the dogs. Oh, it's very farm, and I'm sure that it's very, very relatable to the jury as well. This is a local
That's all the
jury.
questions I have, Dale. Thank you so much.
Redirect.
Curious, Dale, what happened to that rooster?
I can't remember if Grady got him or Bubba got him.
The rooster got his, apparently.
One of the dogs ended up getting the rooster.
We heard a little bit about,
Thanks for
first of all,
closing the
did
loop,
Alex do a lot of
Counsel.
hunting?
I don't know how much hunting he done, but I know he done hunting.
So he wouldn't
Hunting
shoot a dog,
involves, killing animals.
but
He
he would
did.
go and shoot.
So as far as you knew, he was a hunter.
Yes.
That's it.
The
Sit
slope
down.
of the concrete, I'm sorry,
That's all.
the concrete out there on the dog kennel, did it have a slope to it?
Yes.
And that would be for what reason?
To run the water off.
So water would naturally drain out there even if it wasn't sunny?
It would.
And I think you mentioned and talked at length about the feed room and how there was issues there, but were the issues caused, the widening road, was that caused because it was actually draining?
when they done that room, they didn't, like I told that gentleman over there, they didn't seal that bottom plate like it should have been.
I didn't know
And it would allow
animals
water when
could
you
flare
spray
up
the
eczema.
concrete off.
I had
That
no idea.
water kept just slowly getting underneath
Thanks,
the
y'all.
concrete until it started rotting out around the door jambs and stuff.
If Maggie was down there at the kennels, would she have put the dog beds down for the dogs?
She would have.
If the kennel lights and the hanger lights and the underneath lights are on, is it fairly well lit out there?
It is.
Why didn't you ask that
You
earlier?
mentioned what's your bedtime? You said you rise early. What's your bedtime?
My bedtime, it all depends.
Yeah.
What time are you in bed?
That is a good question. Now, I can tell you my routine.
All right, tell me your routine.
All right, sir.
Usually around 4, 5 o'clock, I go get a shower, and I'm in my recliner usually the rest of the day.
You're not in bed. You're in that recliner. After you shower, you're in that recliner.
How's it?
And the day is done.
Love this
Done.
witness.
Okay. And June 7th, that was that Monday. Were you done that night at whatever time you took your shower, 4 or 5 o'clock?
I was done at 4:30, 5 o'clock. I had done had my shower. I was in my recliner.
And you were with your wife?
Yes.
And then he falls asleep, and at some
Last
point
question.
she's like, "Honey,
When you
get up
were
to the
out there at
bed."
5 o'clock at the kennels in Moselle, were there any firearms anywhere on that property
That night, that particular day,
that particular day?
I did not see none.
Thank you.
Anything further?
Love
Thank
this
you, sir.
witness. I love this witness. It's the reason I love this witness, not only because he's funny, but he told what he saw, what he did, and that is it. He answered the questions that were asked. He answered
Call
them
your next
honestly.
witness.
He didn't try to.
Carson Burney.
I couldn't hear what he said. Carson, somebody. He couldn't. He didn't say what he didn't know or see. He clearly likes the work that he does at Moselle. He clearly has fondness for the Murdaugh family and wasn't going to shy away from that fondness. He is just so credible and so honest about what he saw.
Testimony you give today will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
He
so help you God.
knows.
I do.
He knows the hose. He knows where the dogs are. And that was really important testimony that also had some very light moments that were delightful. He was just a
Carson
delight.
Burney, Burney.
Carson, your accent's a little harder to swallow
Yeah,
after
it's
that
the
last
afternoon. Good
witness. He was
afternoon, Mr. Burney.
delightful.
Afternoon.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Mr. Burney.
My name is Carson Burney. As I mentioned, I've lived in South Carolina a little over 20 years.
Did you go to Wade
I
Hampton High School?
graduated from University of South Carolina 2013 with a degree in finance. In 2015, I went back to USC, completed a 6-month paralegal certificate program there. 2019, I joined the Department of Revenue as a sales tax auditor. And in 2021, I was hired on as the forensic accountant in the state grand jury division at the South Carolina Attorney General's office.
So we work together.
We do. We used to have offices right next to each other.
About how long have you been with the Attorney General's office again?
Approximately a year and a half.
And about how long were you with the Department of Revenue before you came over to us?
A little over 2 years.
Back to financials.
And say again for me, what is your job title with the AG's office?
I'm the forensic accountant in the state grand jury division.
All right, forensic accountant. What is a forensic accountant?
So a forensic accountant, it's a broad term, but essentially what I do is compile records.
It's accounting,
primarily
but make it
financial
badass
records that
and
include
nosy.
loans, credit card statements, bank account information, compile that information, and then pass it on typically to law enforcement or the prosecutors in my section.
And when you talk about, you look at these records, what sort of volume of records are we talking about? Hundreds of pages, thousands of pages, 10,000s of pages?
In this case, thousands of pages of records, yes, sir.
Thousands of pages?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say tens of thousands of pages?
Probably, yes.
Do you
Is
like
it
your
a
job,
lot?
Mr. Burney?
I do like it. it can be tedious, but I do
Forensic
like
accounting's
that.
cool.
I find a sense of fulfillment.
Do you have any certifications in connection with your work?
I do. I am a certified fraud examiner, which is a test. Essentially, you learn and you are tested on different fraud schemes, how to investigate those fraud schemes, the law surrounding that, and then different fraud prevention and deterrence methods.
Sir, have you been
As
following
a
the Jen
forensic
Shaw case?
accountant, are you familiar with the concept called tracing?
I am.
What is tracing?
Oh, we're going to find out where the money
Tracing,
went. This will be
in the
interesting.
context we're going to talk about, it's looking at the source of funds and tracing it out through to see where the final disposition of those funds ultimately end up.
And in your employment as a forensic accountant, have you had opportunity to conduct any tracing analysis on records provided as part of this case?
I have pretty much all the alleged stolen money I have traced.
Your Honor, the state would at this time move to qualify Mr. Burney as an expert in forensic accounting, particularly as to the tracing of funds.
Your Honor, we don't have any objections to his qualifications. We would renew our previous objections
Are you gonna
on this
stipulate
whole
to him
line of
being an
testimony
expert?
under 404 and 403.
He's qualified as an expert.
Are there different ways of tracing funds, Mr. Burney?
There's several different methods.
What method did you apply in this particular matter?
I used what's called a first in, first out method. Simply put, the first money into an account that I'm looking at is the first money out. And in context of the tracing, it'd be the money from the source of the checks and then the first money out.
He did
Now,
not testify
and I kind
during
of
the
jumped ahead of myself a little
404s.
bit. When money is moving
They
around
proffered what he
between
would
different
say,
bank accounts,
but he did not
the
testify.
banks aren't
This is new.
transmitting, the serial numbers on particular dollar bills, are they?
They are not.
All right, so you can't necessarily tell that a dollar with the serial number is the same dollar as that serial number and going across multiple accounts, can you?
No, you cannot.
And so are these methodologies how you go about deciding that a dollar in one account is the same as the dollar from another account?
That's correct. When you have a bank account, obviously it's a pool of money. So we have to apply some rules to say this money comes from this source.
Now, you indicated you use the first in, first out method. Is there any sort of lay explanation or description you can provide to us?
Yes. I like to use the example of, say you have $10 in your bank account. And for this example, we'll say it's legitimate money in that bank account. You go over to grandma's house, you get sticky fingers, you take $10 out of grandma's purse. You put that money in the same bank account. So now you have commingled funds, and we'll call the $10 from grandma's purse illegitimate funds. And then you have a transaction, let's say it's $15. So you're pulling partially from the $10 you previously had, the legitimate funds, and then $5 out of the $10 from grandma's account. So that's how the first in, first out method would work.
And so under that first in, first out method, what portion of that $15 would come from those legitimate funds and what portion of that would come from the sticky fingers money?
The $10 would be legitimate funds, and then the $5 from grandma's $10 you took and put into your bank account without her permission.
What other methodologies are there for the tracing of funds?
There's a lowest intermediate balance rule. Typically, you see it in trust fund accounting. It's with commingled funds. And typically, the principle behind that is any withdrawals out of those commingled funds are deemed to be personal funds, and the funds remaining in that account would be trust funds. You see it sometimes in bankruptcy proceedings. Another one is
Yes,
the one
you
I
do in
mentioned, the first
bankruptcy.
in, first out method. Then you have the reverse, which would be the last in, first out method, or last in, first out method. And then one I call essentially a proximity rule. If you see a large transaction, a large deposit come in and then almost immediately come out with a similar amount, you can draw a conclusion that those funds were to fund that other transaction.
So to go over that last one a little bit, if you're looking at a bank account and you see $1,000 come in and then right away $1,000 come out, would that be the proximity rule that you just described?
That's exactly correct.
And in that circumstance, you wouldn't even necessarily need to apply that first in, first out, or last in, first out, or any of the particularized math. You just say 1,000, it's all the same.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, you've explained.
In this
counsel.
particular case, were you asked
Yes,
to
please.
look into the deposit of $792,000 into accounts under the control of Alec Murdaugh?
Let's keep
was.
going.
All right. When was that money deposited into which accounts?
Can I review my notes?
Please do.
They get so into the weeds with some of this stuff, but
The
this
$792,000 you are referring to it has been called the Ferris fees and previous testimony. It was 3 different checks, all from the Wilson Law Group. The dates deposited were March 10th, 2021, March 23rd, 2021, and April 20th, 2021. The first check was $192,000, the second $375,000, and the third was $225,000, and all had a check date of March 10th, 2021.
And I'm sorry, what was that last date again?
The last date, the $225,000 was deposited on April 20th, 2021.
I just want to know where the money goes. I want to know where the money goes, and I want to see if his tabs are color coded.
And did you apply any tracing analysis to the disbursement of those funds?
I did.
And
Whitney,
which
I'm gonna answer this,
form of analysis did you apply to it?
I did the first in, first out method.
And without getting into any granular detail of the expenses from the account from that money, what generally was that money expended on?
So a large portion of the money was checks to associates, known people to Alex Murdaugh. And then the remaining of the funds, primarily, we see credit card payments.
When was that $792,000 exhausted under that first in, first out analysis?
So it was completely exhausted out of the account by May 25th, 2021.
There's been a lot of attempts at math from the stand over the course of this trial. Am I correct in judging that to be roughly a month apart from the date of the last check deposited?
Yes, that would be approximately a month from April 20th, 2021.
So $792,000 exhausted in just a little bit over a month from the date of last deposit. And what was the date of the first deposit again? I apologize.
The first one was March 10th, 2021. So from that date to the last date, I believe 2.5 approximately months.
Jennifer, you're sharing that you're getting a tattoo, and we're distracting you. You're going to have to share the results with us at
All
some
3
point.
checks were deposited into a Bank of America account ending in 6779 under the name of Alex Murdaugh.
Now let's take a step back and talk a little bit about the accounts of Alec Murdaugh. Was that Alex's only account at Bank of America?
Rocky Top
No.
Girl, I will
What
take
was,
you up on
his
this
other
and go
accounts at
find
Bank of
Project
America?
Donuts in Murphy.
He had other accounts that have been called the fake forge accounts. There are 2 of those accounts, and the accounts seemed to run consecutively. One account ended, and then a second one was created. The reason, I'm not exactly sure, just from looking at the statements, but there were 2 different accounts. There's also a credit card account at Bank of America.
And did Mr. Murdaugh have accounts at Palmetto State Bank?
He did. He had
We know
several
all of
accounts
this.
at Palmetto State Bank.
Was
We
there
know.
a particular account there that appeared in your analysis to be his primary account?
Yes, an account ending in 6092, checking account.
Generally speaking, when following funds
Can we
from
add
Bank of
something
America,
There's foundation
well,
for
let me
all of
rephrase
this.
that question. Was there any pattern in the flow of funds after they were deposited into either the fake forge account or into that Bank of America checking account?
Yes, so when checks were deposited into the fake forge account, typically they were transferred out or withdrawn in cash. If they were transferred out, normally they would go to his personal banking account ending in 6779. Occasionally, we would see cashier's checks come out of one of the forge accounts.
Now, on those cashier's checks, would it say, hey, this is from the fake forge account on the face of it?
No.
When he would cut checks on that personal banking account, would it say, hey, this is stolen money on the face of those checks?
No.
So, and those who would receive those checks, it would just say something to the effect of Alec Murdaugh or something of that nature?
That is correct.
Aside from those Bank of America accounts, did any money make it to Palmetto State Bank?
Yes. Occasionally, once the checks went into the personal account at Bank of America, another check would be written, typically just to Palmetto State Bank, and then ultimately it would be deposited into one of his accounts at Palmetto State Bank.
And would the funds thereafter be dispersed from that account?
Yes.
I just want to know where it went. Where did it go? We already
Circling
have
back
all
around
this
to the
foundation.
$792,000
I wanna know
of
where it went.
Ferris fees or Mack truck fees, were you able to determine when any of those fees or other replacement fees were returned to Chris Wilson?
Yes.
All right, can you tell me a little bit about that?
We know this.
Yes.
Why do we need it again?
Previous testimony
This
had
has been
mentioned
well established.
a $350,000 wire from Palmetto State Bank that went to the Wilson Law Group.
Go for the overview. Go for the overview. Go for the so.
And from
the
which
loan
institution
from
did that
Palmetto-
wire originate?
Did the
Palmetto
loan
State
from
Bank.
Palmetto go to pay back the Wilson funds? We know
And
this.
well, that's $350,000. Were any additional funds provided to Chris Wilson?
Oh my God.
Yes, so in Alex Murdaugh's account ending in 6779, we see a check was mobile deposited for $250,000. And then
We went
the
through
next
all of this
day,
already.
on July
Why?
16th, 2021, there's a wire for that same amount of money, $250,000, that went directly to Wilson Law Group, IOLTA account.
You've all seen it.
I'm showing you a document that is labeled as States Exhibit 518. Do you
I
recognize
don't know
this
if we'll
document?
even get to
I
what the
do.
money was spent
And
on.
is this the document that you were just describing of a $250,000 instrument deposited into?
I think the
Alex
defense is going to let them
That's
be
correct.
cumulative. It
Introduce into
gets
evidence.
us too far away from the last testimony that was actually quite good. I saw a question. Am I leaning towards a verdict yet? No, I'm not. The state's not done. I want to see the end of their case. I want them to flip those photos on top of the Elmo over.
Describing a moment ago.
It is.
More
it down a little
checks.
bit, we got
More
the
checks.
glare.
Why?
Thank you, Mr. Waters.
We-
Right, and that is a check made out
I
to Alex
love
Murdaugh
how they're
for
working the cameras today so we can see
$250,000.
the
What's name at
exhibitors.
top of the
This
instrument?
is fantastic. Thank
It
you.
says John E. Parker.
From your work with investigators throughout
Thank
this
you
case,
for trying
do
to
you know
cover
who
the
John E.
bank
Parker is?
numbers.
I do.
All right, and who is he?
He is
It's a little
a
late for
former
that.
law partner of Alex Murdaugh's.
Sorry,
at what
Mr.
we've been
Parker.
calling PMPED.
All right, and
They
right
should have
here
redacted
above
that.
Mr. Waters' cuticle, there's something written in the memo line. What does that say?
Says loan.
All right, so on the
Y'all
face of
should
this
have
check,
redacted these
be a
checks
loan.
beforehand.
It does.
Too late now.
So that adds up to $600,000. Did you identify any
These accounts are
additional
probably
funds,
closed though. Yes.
sent back to Chris Wilson's
I don't know why
office
they
in
weren't
replacement of
redacted.
that $792,000.
I imagine
I
these
did not.
accounts are closed. They would have to be.
And I apologize. That's,
I just don't know why we're back
Court's
here.
permission, suspect without objection from counsel, we have redacted certain personal identifying account information from the face of this.
So the other ones must be closed. They redacted some, but not the
What's
others.
the date on this instrument, Mr. Burney?
It is July 15th, 2021.
Oh, good. That one's
And
redacted.
Is that the same date as the wire of funds from Palmetto State Bank to Mr. Wilson's trust account?
Why
It
wasn't the
is.
other one redacted? Ugh. It's just so frustrating.
In the course of your analysis, did you have an opportunity to look at Mr. Murdaugh's balances on or about June 7th,
Amelia,
2021?
all of us
did.
are like, get to the
and did
point.
you look at his balances on all of his deposit
We
accounts?
don't
I did.
And did you look at his
need-
balances on all of his outstanding loans and lines of credit?
Yes, all that I've identified, I
we
reviewed
don't
them,
need
yes.
all the foundation
In
again.
your opinion, Mr. Burney, on June 7th, 2021, across Mr. Murdaugh's deposit accounts and demand lines of credit, did Richard Alexander Murdaugh have $792,000 available to return to Chris Wilson?
He did not.
On that same date, June 7th, 2021, across his deposit
This is the
accounts
point.
and his demand lines of credit, Did Richard Alexander Murdaugh have $500,000 available to give to the sons of Gloria Satterfield?
He did not.
On June 7th, 2021, did Richard Alexander Murdaugh have across his deposits
This is the
accounts
point
and
of
his
this.
lines
They
of
could have
credit?
gotten there faster.
Did he have $10 million available to meet the settlement demands of Mark Tinsley?
He did not have $10 million.
And it might seem obvious, given that we went through each of those individual scenarios, but on June 7th, 2021, did Richard Alexander Murdaugh have enough money to fulfill all three of those conditions?
He did. He was not able to fulfill all three conditions. That's correct.
No further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
You could have done that so much faster. We didn't need all the foundation. Don't ask him a question. Just ignore him. Just ignore him.
We're going to break for lunch now. You may step down, do not discuss your testimony. Let's just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Great, step down.
They're letting the jury go. Court is staying in order. I wonder what he's going to say to the
We'll resume at 2:15.
attorneys.
Please not discuss the case.
2:15 p.m. Eastern. I wonder if the court will say anything more to the attorneys. I'll just keep an eye on it. No, not setting up to checks to Cousin Eddie. Simply setting up the fact that Alec didn't have enough money to pay all those fees. They could have done this with another witness. They could have done this faster. The judge sounds exhausted. We are all exhausted. It's been a very long 3 weeks of this trial. We are going into week 4. I'm just going to wait and see if the court says anything to the attorneys or it pops himself off the bench. It looks like he's walking off the bench now. So they are done for lunch. We will be done for lunch shortly, and then we will be back ideally 5 minutes before court starts. So at 1:10 p.m. Eastern. So, 1:10 p.m. Central is when we will be back. So the court is now breaking for lunch. I'm going to do a quick summary. I'm tired, y'all. The financial stuff has been hammered and hammered and hammered. I thought the last witness was so much better. The witness before who took care of the dogs had so much more new and interesting information. Getting back into the financial stuff just feels like it's exhausting. It's just like, oh, stop it. So let's, I've got one more thing to do on this. I want to make sure I've got my time right for the afternoon live. So I'm going to go do that real quick and just double check that I've got my time set because I think I set it for 1:10. Miguelina already did it. Thank you, Miguelina. You're the best. You rock. You already did it. It's all handled. Look, it's all handled. It's all handled. Let's swoop. Let's swoop. Let's swoop. All right, y'all. This morning was interesting. We started off with as promised by Dick Harpootlian, painfully long cross-examination of the medical examiner. It seems that Harpootlian was questioning quite a lot about contact gunshot wounds, where a weapon would be in contact with someone, seeming to indicate that Paul's wounds could have been self-inflicted. I think we will see a defense expert to that point when the defense gets into their case at the end of this week, beginning of next week. So that's what I think we will see. Who knows? Maybe we will, maybe we won't. Then we got to the GM witness because they didn't turn over any of the OnStar data. And the GM witness, I saw some of you in the chat saying this is pointless. What is this? It was more foundation. The GM witness didn't even look at the data being turned over, didn't analyze the data. The GM witness simply said, this is kept, I don't even think they said the regular course of business. This is kept in the regular course of business by GM. And this is the data we downloaded. The serial number matches this Suburban. Here are the records. It was just the keeper of records to lay the foundation for those records. The defense wasn't going to waive foundation on this late discovered evidence. I wouldn't have either. So I completely understand why they didn't. And it was just literally hey, this is the data from that car. We just turned it over. Purely foundation. So not a waste of time, a needed witness, but also it feels slow. It just feels out of place with the pacing. Then we got to Dale, the caregiver of the dogs at Moselle. Dale, giver of care, dog extraordinaire. And that was very interesting testimony about how the water dries and runs off, that the kennels had already been hosed down for the day. Water had been filled. So why was the hose running? Why is it still wet by the kennels after these murders? Did somebody try to hose down the area or hose down themselves? The hose is wrapped back up wrong. Somebody was doing something with the hose after Dale left for the day. We don't know what, but it gives both sides some room to argue. A very interesting witness. I thought a delightful witness to just listen to him talk about the dogs. The dogs were put back in the wrong places. He talked about where the dogs normally went and that Maggie would always make sure the dogs were in the same kennels, but someone put the dogs back that evening, not in the right kennels. He also defended Bubba's honor and said, no, he's not hard-headed. He's just a little rambunctious, and then really did blame the rooster that was taunting the dogs. But as counsel said in his redirect, the rooster got his and one of the dogs caught him. It was very interesting testimony and some of the easiest testimony to follow in this trial. Thankfully, the civilian witnesses have really been fantastic in this trial. And by civilian, I mean the non-law enforcement witnesses. We ended the day with more money stuff. Alec's accounts didn't have the money to meet all of his financial burdens. So the prosecution is arguing financial motive. He didn't have all the money to meet these burdens. He couldn't pay the Satterfields. He couldn't pay back Chris Wilson. He couldn't deal with the boat case. You know what they haven't answered? How does killing Paul and Maggie fix that problem that you keep pointing out? You keep pointing out the problem. You keep pointing out the problem. There wasn't enough money in the accounts. How does this fix that problem? Because they're not arguing at this point. They're not arguing that he didn't want them to discover it. The prosecution with that question is implying that somehow that's the motive. Oh, there is not enough money to cover all of this. There's no money to be had from killing Maggie and Paul. There's no evidence of any of that. So why are you still going with he didn't have any money and somehow this fixes the problem? What, because it buys him time? That doesn't make any sense. Maybe it's that there's so much pressure. I'm annoyed. Maybe it's that there's so much pressure and he didn't want them to find out. But that's not where they're arguing. They haven't been going down that road. And they haven't argued that Maggie had the properties in her name and they needed those properties. And that he needed those properties. And that he would be able to get those properties from her. Haven't had a minute of testimony about that. There was an allusion to the fact that the properties were in Maggie's name. But no testimony that those would have gone to him and that that would have solved the financial problems because he would have been able to sell her beloved beach house. Argue that then. Argue that. He was in such a financial hole, he was going to sell the beach house. So these questions keep implying that he financially would benefit. They need to tie it together more clearly. Mark Tinsley's testimony a few days ago said that the boat case goes away if they're subject to a vigilante. Okay, tie that back. We know Alec thought this was about the boat case. We'll see how they tie it together at the end. And maybe I'll be less critical then. But we'll see how they tie it together at the end. The whole thing, man. The whole thing. But it's the way that they question that last witness that leaves the implication of, oh, well, if there wasn't enough money in the accounts, how do the murders fix the problem? And maybe it's because the cases go away. But the way that the question ended, it could have been, so there's not enough money to cover these unless these go away. Unless these debts go away. The way that they're questioning leaves the answer open in a different way. For me, it's very interesting to watch. All right, we're going to get to some questions as fast as we can. And then I'm going to take a break for lunch. Y'all are going to take a break for lunch. We're going to take a break for lunch. Thank you for the super chats today. Oh, I wanted to share. A number of you, I don't know how to quantify a lot when there's 40,000 of you in here. Some have asked where to go and get the new and limited mug that I re-released for Valentine's Day. Why did I re-release it? Because I love the Lawnard so much. If you go to lawnardshop.com, it's this Lawnard Love mug, limited edition, right on the front page of the shop. So that mug is just right there. So lawnardshop.com. That's not what I wanted to do. Lawnardshop.com. If you just land on the front landing page, you've got some of our most popular stuff here at the top. And then you've got our newer editions, including the Purple Fax hat, the Blackout 3D fax hat. This blacked out fax hat on the back says "not fuckery" in black thread. It is very subtle, but very funny. And then this is the 3D hats that I wear all the time. Is this my one that said, no, this is my purple one. So these are the 3D embroidered hats that I wear all the time. I have them all over my house. I think I have 4 or 5 of them all over my house. So that's where you can find those, at lawnardshop.com. So thank you for all of those who were asking where to go find that. That's where to go find that. And those are available through the end of the month. It was a little Valentine's Day stuff. And then after the break, I will be gifting some memberships as well to share the Law Nerd love, because we are going to have some members only stuff later this week. So with that, let's answer some questions. Alec is an enigma. I still don't get him. I don't either. Have we established who was shot first? TK, no, they didn't establish that at all. They didn't ask. Question, how are all these experts able to review their notes, but in Deppy heard they were not? Whitney, this is a great question. It comes up almost daily. The witnesses in Depp heard were allowed to review their notes. Dr. Hughes was reading her notes into the testimony, or reading her notes into the record as testimony. That is not allowed. So when the witness is like, let me review my notes, and they're like, oh, it was this day, oh, it was this time, they're allowed to review their notes to refresh their recollection. They're not allowed to read their notes into the record. Dr. Hughes was straight up reading off of her notes. So that's why it was a big problem, because she was like, oh, I said this. You can't just read them. The report is not the testimony. Your memory is the testimony. And then Dr. Hughes was like, well, I have Post-its here. I don't want it to be a memory game. That's what the fuck it is, though. You're an expert witness. You know that. Ari said, I'm so over the financial stuff. Same. I know it's important, but it's just been droning on. And here's the thing. If you're feeling that way, the jury may too. And the jury might be like, this is interesting, but enough. But it also can overshadow some of the other important testimony. Can GM be sued for failing to comply? Not practically. The AG's office might have a little bit more of a conversation to find out why their subpoena didn't get responded to. But no, there's not really. I mean, the failing to respond to a subpoena, you could go and get a court order to force them to comply. And then after the court order, if they don't comply, try to go after them for contempt of court. But none of that was done. They said they complied with the subpoena, and then that was it. So Chevy said, my I Have Questions hoodie is a big hit at work. Thanks, Emily. You're welcome. I love the I Have Questions hoodies. I love this one. Is my Law Nerd crew neck. I think I might do an embroidered a round of these as well. Final verdict on Bubba is that he's a hecking good boy who was just standing up to the rooster bully. He is protecting his friends. He is sticking up for to their tormentor, the rooster. There's a whole Animal Farm novel going on at Moselle that I would much rather focus on the ins and outs of these delightful dogs and what's going on with the chickens than I would about the fact that those dogs were all in the direction of Paul being shot. And the fact that none of the dogs were harmed is quite fortunate and quite stunning to me. It's just, and then you see all the dogs laying down in their kennels in those police photos that we haven't seen before. It's just, the whole thing is just a lot. Listen to the recording of AM's bond hearing last night. Receiver said Moselle and MM's name and Edisto in both. This conflicts with testimony at this trial. They have not really proffered a lot of testimony at this trial about whose name was what. The witness from Palmetto State Bank said he thought that Edisto was in Maggie's name. Thought. It was never really offered to prove a point. It was part of an answer to something else, and nobody circled back around to it, ever. Question, EDB, is the Shaw case federal? Jen Shaw's case was federal. She pled guilty and is being sentenced to prison. I think her sentencing date is later this week, maybe the 17th. I would need to go back and double check. My head, frankly, hurts this morning from Dick's cross-examination. How would it be possible for Paul able to hold the gun at the angle? I agree with you, Tantongas. I don't think it's physically possible based on the evidence either. We'll see. Dana Loves Zumba said, can FIFO really be used from a financial standpoint? I've only seen it used in logistics supply. I am not a forensic accountant. I don't know. This witness said it could. The defense might have an expert that says it can't. If I'm the defense, I would ignore most of this, but we'll see what they do. It doesn't make sense since someone comes and kills someone is not going to bring their own guns, but they're going to hope that the victims are going to be there and hope that they have their guns down there too. And then wind the hose back up and put the dogs back and turn off the lights. Rachel says, seems like everyone else takes care of them. Do these rich people just exist? I don't know, but it seems like they have quite a lot of support. I will say for busy lawyers, it's not unusual to have support and help with meals, laundry, and things like that, errands, because truly most lawyers work all the time because they make money when they are doing work. So they work all the time. So if they're at the grocery store, billable hour lawyers, particularly, these are contingency lawyers. Any lawyers in the chat can let me know how you feel about it. But if they're at the grocery store picking up groceries for the family, unless they're doing it because they enjoy it, they're losing money by being at the grocery store because their time and energy is better spent elsewhere. So I do think they have everybody just taking care of them. And Maggie, Maggie takes care of the dogs and was remodeling the beach house and is trying to keep their life together. But yeah, they employed quite a lot of people locally. So, and it seems that everyone enjoyed this family, enjoyed working with this family, that he enjoyed working with this family as well. So the dog caretaker said the dog beds were up and the pictures show this. I need to go take a look at that. Teachers too. 17-acre farm, ton of work. Agree. Kennels are a lot of work. Agreed. And they weren't always there. So they weren't always there. Let's see. Artists, just shoot me an email at help@EmilyDBaker and we will take a look on it. And let us know if you wanted the one with the not fuckery on the back. There's 2 on the website. So email us which one you want and which one you thought you got with your order number, and we can always go in and fix it. So we'll get it taken care of for you. But you've got to email them, email help@now, and we'll take a look. I'll text the team to go in and take a look for that. Alec took his hired help for granted. They may bring him down. I don't think they even want to bring him down. I think they just saw what they saw and are telling him what they saw. That's it. Auditor here, FIFO can be used for all kinds of accounting. There we go. Question, objection, Lawnard just bought all 3. Love it so much. Can Buddy sue for slander? I feel like he's been called hard-headed a lot, and he's just misunderstood. I feel like Buddy is just misunderstood, and he is really just stubborn because he's right. Can't relate. Actually can relate. I'm not hard-headed. I'm just correct. Sometimes also hard-headed. AM said no other guns in the vehicle the night of the murders. The only gun he got was from the house. He did say that. And I don't think they recovered a gun from the vehicle when they searched it. We would have heard by that. Why waste time putting dog beds up if you're killing and trying to escape? Makes no sense unless they knew the dogs would get blood on them and track it everywhere. Maybe, but the dogs were away. I don't know. Feels like 2 weeks of look how kind and diligent we were. Now it's, let's present a case. Maybe because the jury can't take notes, they bring it in late. That's possible. Maybe first in, first out, figure everything that they learned at the beginning of trial is now gone. Web fan said, Emily, I just subscribed yesterday. Love your channel. Hi. Question, what happened to the dogs and chickens? Did Blanca place them with caring people? I don't know what happened with the rest of the dogs. And I don't know what happened with the chickens, but Moselle is up for sale. I'm sure that if Blanca didn't do it, there are others, including this last witness, that would have helped take care of the animals. I'm sure that the animals were well taken care of. There were a lot of people around that took care of them. We know that Rogan took his dog back. Whether he took other dogs, we don't know, but I'm sure the animals are fine. Has anyone asked if Maggie ever carried a gun? Nobody's asked. Not insinuating anything, just curious because they have asked about the rest of the family. I imagine the answer is no, or nobody knew, but they have not asked about it much. Is the identity of the jurors a secret? Can they tell friends and family they are in this jury? This is really the only thing going. So if they're in jury duty right now, their friends and family probably know what trial they're on. They can't talk about the case till after they're done. But yes, their identity is kept secret from the media. They can talk to their friends and family about the trial after deliberations are done. Gigi problems regarding Southern names. Lots go by their middle names. If any fellow Lawnards are planning to have human kids, I do not advise this. I spent my whole life saying that's my first name, but I go by. My brother also goes by his middle name, Gingy Probs, because my parents started calling him by his middle name. So yes, There was an employer once that thought that my brother had a brother. My brother, it's just the two of us. My brother does not have a brother, but thought that my brother had a brother that was by his first name. It was like, oh, you're this one. And clearly there must be another one by the first name. And he's like, no, that's my full name. No, okay. All the time. I have a magnet that says, I'm not arguing. I'm explaining why I'm right. Fits me to a T. I mean, and Janice, you probably are, as lots of us are. I'm sure lots in the chat are like, oh, same me. Please replay the video that Paul made of Alec and the tree. It's in last week's Quick Bits. I've got to prep this week's Quick Bits and do lunch, but it's in last week's Quick Bits in that video. So if we have time this afternoon, I will do that. I've got to go get some lunch today. Without Bubba, we would not have heard Alec's voice on the Snapchat video. Bubba is the real hero, possibly his revenge for being blamed for Gloria's fall or for all the hard-headed slander. But yes, without Bubba catching the chicken, we probably wouldn't have heard Maggie and Alec talking. It's a very, very good point, Emily. She may have been washing her hands off if she grabbed the chicken out of Bubba's mouth. Also true. If suspect was walking towards him, the first shot makes sense. It would be closer than 3 feet on the second shot. Or the shooter was closer and then walking backwards. Don't know. Love the coverage and commentary. I have been a silent law nerd since Step Heard. That's okay. I work for a company that had a contract with OnStar. I was a voice over the car speaker. That's cool. Sent directions to cars and other cool stuff. KDP, that sounds rad. I love that. I would be like, I voice over in my head quite a lot, but I picture my car being like, no, dumbass, no, turn now. Nope, now you missed it. You missed it because you weren't listening to me. What are you thinking about? You have missed your turn. You're going to have to find somewhere to turn around. Why didn't you just listen to me the first time? This is what happens in my head when I'm not following my directions on my car. They try to tell me. I'm confused. Why are they not going over the GM data? They have another witness that's going to go over that data probably tomorrow. I just banged my camera. Sorry, y'all. I need to get a new arm for the camera when I change my setup. Listening to some of the jail calls between Alec and Buster, Alec never says we need to find out who did this to Mom and Paul. It's a very good point. The jury won't know that, but it's a good point. Tracy said, hi from Northern Alabama. Was curious if you saw Dave Matthews in Huntsville. If he's playing in Huntsville, I have not seen him in Huntsville, but I would. The new amphitheaters in Huntsville and Franklin, Tennessee are amazing. I have seen Dave in Franklin. I will see him in Nashville. I have not seen him in Huntsville. I love Huntsville, though. Huntsville is so fucking cool. There's all kinds of great stuff in Huntsville. So I will be back in Huntsville soon, as soon as I can. But if Dave was playing in Huntsville, I would definitely go. I didn't see anything in Huntsville this tour because it's within driving distance. I would have gone. Trying to keep my tour to early in the summer instead of loading up all my tour dates in September. So, question, are juries allowed to show reactions on their face? Sometimes they can't help it. So jurors tend not to be overly expressive, but they're also not required. They're not told to not make faces. The audience reactions can sway jurors. So when you see talk about whether Buster was chewing his nail or flipping off a witness, it's like, oh, what? I don't know if he's just chewing a nail or flipping off a witness. I don't at all. But those kinds of things can be interpreted and read into from those in the audience. So the audience is generally advised, and we heard it in Depp v. Heard. The judge admonished the audience several times not to react audibly, not to react facially, and trying to keep the audience more sedate. But you had the audience reacting kind of loudly sometimes to Depp's testimony in that case. And so it was that. So the audience reactions can be more of a problem in court than the reactions of the jury. The jury's allowed to react and react. They're the jury. They're the fact finders. So that's what it is. And we haven't heard that. We've heard a few chuckles from this audience, but it seems that when the jury's also chuckling, that we're hearing a few chuckles from the audience. It's nothing that the judge has addressed in this case. The judge addressed it a lot in Depp Heard, or a lot more in Depp Heard than in this case. So we haven't seen that. And this courtroom was full yesterday, not full today. The second they're two jurors have been excused because of the vid. Today, the courtroom is fucking empty. Maybe people just wanted to see the medical examiner testimony. I don't know. Happy Valentine's Day to this wonderful, intelligent, and caring group. Yes, I'm deeply, deeply protective of the law nerds. I love this group. Question, is it really possible that Alec will take the stand? I don't know if it's a distraction technique or if it's possible. Anything is possible. hubris is an interesting thing. He might think he can explain. Like, let me explain. It's this week's podcast is going to be about Alec Baldwin talking his way into getting prosecuted. Sometimes when you try to talk your way out of something, you just talk yourself into it. We have a seasoned judge that cautions the jury before the ME testimony. She gives a disclaimer that the ME and attorneys are clinicians and that the jury should approach this testimony as clinicians. I think that's really appropriate, and just reminding the approach that they're coming from, because it's hard. Do we know if there was life insurance on Maggie and Paul? The defense has argued that there is not, and we've heard witnesses say that there was not. So it seems that there was not. Why argue Paul is the perpetrator when none of the evidence agrees? I don't know if they're going to argue it. They insinuated it. We haven't gotten to whether they're going to argue that or not. Hun said, this has been so hard to watch. I don't know if he's guilty or not, but I can't imagine having to relive my loved one's deaths. I agree with all of that. Dr. B is the GOAT. He is fantastic. Happy Valentine's to you both, but it sure seems like every day is Valentine's Day, as it should be. We're kind of just the same all the time. It's just, but we've also been married for a very long time. So it's just, be considerate of your spouse and take care of them when, and help take care of them and be a team. That is the goal. Communicate clearly and tell them when you're cranky. So they know it's not their fault. It really goes a long way just to be like, no, I'm super cranky. It has nothing to do with you. We try to teach our teen. Just tell us when you're cranky and then we'll stop asking you questions. This is a very fair point, Pookie Woos. And it's, again, the insinuation of the earlier testimony is really, really interesting. I know that there are some super chats I have not gotten to. I think I pulled up almost everything that I can, because if I don't go eat, I'm not going to get back. Where Brianna said, question, where is he going to find an expert who's willing to testify that Paul could physically? I don't know if he is. I think there might be a defense expert to question how close the weapon would have been because of the gases, and maybe either imply that that's self-inflicted or that somebody was going for a more execution style killing. I'm not quite sure. So I'm not sure. I think we will see a defense expert, though. The way he was questioning the ME makes it feel like he's setting up you can disagree. I want to hear more about Maggie. We've seen so many of Paul's friends, but have only heard about Maggie through her staff. That's true. That's true. Kay, for now, you missed mine. I will try to find it. We have been a very, very busy day to day. And I'm not seeing it. I might have pulled it earlier on and not read it out. If I pulled it up earlier, it might have just come across the screen. Truman Show said, what I am as a lawyer knew 2 guns was enough for reasonable doubt. So he had to use 2 guns, allegedly, cough drop. What AM as a lawyer knew. Maybe. So let's see. I am trying to find that. And I do not see it in the super chats that we have left. So if I missed it, wait, here. We just talked about this. What about Kay for now? I just talked about that. What about, and they might be trying to argue that too, but it wouldn't, that was the exit wound. So that's maybe why they're arguing entrance exit, but that's clearly an exit wound. And I can picture what she's saying. And that is an exit wound, not an entrance wound. They do different things. So when she's saying that's an exit wound, it's because it's clearly an exit wound. Happy Valentine's Day. Can you tell me where to find the limited edition beverage mug? We definitely got to that. So time of death is probably too vague for either side to use it. That's also possible, Wendy. But if you're the defense trying to introduce doubt, why not? How confident are you that the prosecutors will be able to tie all the key facts together for their closing summary? I liked Creighton's opening. It felt like he was telling a story. I want to see how their timeline witness goes, and then we'll go from there. So with all of that, thank you for being here, y'all. Hydrate yourselves. I'm going to go hydrate myself and get a little bit of lunch. I appreciate all of you. Happy Valentine's Day, Law Nerds. You know where to find all of this stuff. If you want advance notice of things like that, because I sent out the links to our members this morning. That's at lawnerdsunite.com. You're welcome to join us over there as well. We've got some exciting things rolling out for you guys soon. So, I mean, there's great stuff there already, but there's new stuff coming too. So with all of that, it's time to go. Let's go. I'll see you in less than an hour. Bye. That's the morning of day 17. You can find all the Law Nerd goodies at lawnerdshop.com. Connect with me on social media at the Emily D. Baker. And don't forget to check out my podcasts, The Emily Show, and the new podcast, Quick Bits, summarizing everything I talk about on my Tuesday and Thursday live streams. You know, when you only have time for just the quick bits.